Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Duju really didn't have a good impression of the Sunset Lake. After picking up Su Hee here the last time, Chi-Che had been sending people to investigate this place. Surprisingly, there had been no results. Later on, he was so angry that he almost made him blow up this place. Therefore, Duju was still sweating in his heart when he came here again. He was afraid that the president would make him blow up this place if he was unhappy. Although Chi-Che had always been reserved and mature in Wenzhou, Duju, who had followed him since young, absolutely believed that Chi-Che could really do this. President, why don't we just rush in and take a look? Or we can directly send people to surround this place. Sitting in the car, Duju began to come up with bad ideas. Chi-Che glanced at him coldly. When did you become so violent? 3 black lines immediately appeared on Duju's forehead. Was this also called violence? He was afraid that he would come back after the event, so he had no choice but to come up with this method. But your method is not bad. After tidying up his suit, Chi-Che got out of the car with long legs and went to the door to personally press the doorbell. He was surprised that Fu Jianxing was not in the hall of the villa today. In his memory, Fu Jianxing practically lived here for a long time. Lung Xingge personally held a fruit drink in front of He. Her beautiful face was full of smiles, which made her look much better than before. Mother, come with me. Okay. Uncle has been waiting for you for so many years. Lung Xingge's face immediately turned pale when she heard He's words. You don't understand. Lung Xingge shook her head gently. Her expression was inexplicable. Fu Jianxing and I cannot leave each other. Once we leave, one of us will definitely die. Once she left, Fu Jianxing would definitely abandon everything and dare to be enemies with the world. Then the peace that she had painstakingly maintained for so many years would definitely be gone. If she left, Fu Jianxing would definitely be unable to recover from his setback and regret. Thinking of this, Lung Xingge's face revealed a cold chill. It was actually several times colder than this late autumn. He was shocked. She had always known that her mother was definitely not a weak person. Otherwise, she would not have broken off from the family. On the contrary, her mother was very independent. This thought made her unconsciously shiver. With her mother's arrogance, she was actually able to endure for 20 years. What exactly did she want to do? Lung Xingge knew what her daughter was thinking. It could be said that the mother and daughter were surprisingly similar at times. She was not surprised at all that he had been hiding his illness from Chi-Che. At this moment, she was very clear about the suspicion in He's heart. However, she did not intend to say it. She only held He's hand and said with a firm tone, I will make you proud. I have never let you be honored once. Sometimes I feel ashamed of the name I gave you back then. However, I promise you that I will make you proud and domineering in the future. He panicked and held Lung Xingge's hand tightly. I don't need it. I just want to be safe and happy with you. Humph. I've been imprisoned for my whole life, and you've been wandering around for half a lifetime. We mother and daughter shouldn't be like this. It's all because of Fu Jianxing. Even if he was the man I loved the most back then, he would never be forgiven. Lung Xingge snorted coldly, her phoenix-like eyes narrowed slightly. Her beautiful face had added a lot of charm because of her action. It was as if time had never left a trace on her face. Mother, you finally admit that the person you love the most is still Fu Jianxing. He whispered in her heart. Fu Jianxing had used all kinds of methods to throw her into the pool and almost drown her, but he could not force his mother to say the word love. He wondered how he would feel if he heard it now. Let's not talk about this anymore. He waved his hand and pretended to be relaxed as he said, Mother will tell you a good news and a bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Of course I want to hear the good news. I'm pregnant. These words were like thunder, shocking Lung Xingge so much that her face turned pale. Your body? Su He's body was the real source of Lung Xingge's hatred towards Fu Jianxing. My body cannot give birth. Even if I was born, I would not be able to escape the fate of dying prematurely. That's why I said there was a piece of bad news. He stuck out his tongue and made a mischievous face. Lung Xingge felt as if someone had used a knife to gouge a piece of her heart. She felt extremely sorry for Hee. The mother and daughter were too alike. Their hearts were bleeding, but their faces were stubborn and refused to show it. Does Chi know? Without guessing, she already knew who the child belonged to. She knew her daughter's heart better than anyone. She had never moved away from Chi. He shook her head. I can't keep this child. She didn't want to disappoint Che. And Fu Mingyao already has child. It's really similar to when Ling from back then. Lung Chinga muttered to herself. She gently pulled Hee into her arms and patted her back to comfort her. If Chi allows Fu Mingyao's child to be born, you should make a complete decision with him. Don't walk the same path as your mother back then. I can't wait for the child to be born. At this point, Hee let go and cried for the first time. She cried so hard that her heart was torn apart, and she was filled with despair and sorrow. She was crying not because she couldn't wait for Fu Mingyao's child to be born, but because her child would never be born. Lung Chinga was speechless as she patted her back. Her bright eyes were in a daze as she looked into the unknown distance and landed in the air. Finally, countless complicated thoughts flashed through her eyes. There was regret, guilt, ruthlessness, and a trace of despair that was on the verge of collapse. Sir, you can't go in. If you go in, don't blame me for being rude. The old housekeeper's furious voice broke the pain and despair in the room. He hurriedly wiped away her tears. She was so stubborn that she rarely cried in front of others. How could the old housekeeper stop Chi, who was striding like a meteor? The bodyguards at the periphery were also taken care of by Duju. Chi's intrusion was like entering a place where no one was present. The old housekeeper broke out in cold sweat. The 70 villa by the Sunset Lake was a taboo for the entire city. It could be said that the Sunset Lake was specially built by Fu Jianxing to imprison Lung Chinga. No one had dared to intrude in the past 20 years. Chi's sudden intrusion today was out of everyone's expectations. After all, Fu Jianxing was the richest man in a city. As long as one had a little bit of connections, they would know that this place was inextricably linked to Fu Jianxing. No one would make things difficult for them. Lung Chinga also revealed a playful smile. She had long heard of Chi's shrewdness and methods. Otherwise, Fu Jianxing, this old fox, wouldn't have spent so much effort to make him his son-in-law and take over the Fu Corporation in the future. Fu Jianxing didn't have a son, so he had been selecting an heir since a long time ago. The only person he had his eyes on was Chi. Rather than saying that Fu Jianxing had chosen Chi for Fu Mingyao, it was more appropriate to say that he had chosen Chi. That was why he had schemed to make Fu Mingyao a chess piece in a marriage alliance. Looking at He's red eyes, Chi's eyes unconsciously narrowed, and his brows tightly knitted together. Come here. Chi stood quietly on the spot and stretched out his hand towards He. The calm and reserved He gave off a sense of security like a mountain. He hesitated for a moment and eventually moved step by step towards Chi. Without waiting for her to steady herself, Chi pulled her tightly into his embrace. Smelling her intoxicating fragrance, his heart finally relaxed. Ache! He used a lot of strength and hugged He until He couldn't breathe. He pushed him in discomfort. Chi gently loosened his grip. Only then did he look up and size up the woman in front of him. Upon closer inspection, he couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. The woman in front of him was too similar to He. This is my mother. He raised her eyes and secretly sized up Chi's expression. She could not help but secretly heave a sigh of relief when she realized that he was not as angry as she had imagined. Chi had heard a lot about He's background before. Although he never took it to heart when it came to all sorts of unpleasantness, he had always been curious about what kind of mother could be so unconcerned. Hello, Andy. I've long admired your elegance. Chi bowed slightly and greeted her in a very gentlemanly manner. Lung Chinga knew that her future son-in-law probably did not like her. I'll have to trouble you to take care of her. Don't worry, I'll definitely find He well. He hugged He domineeringly. The man had a determined look on his face. Lung Chinga finally could not stop smiling. Not only were they mother and daughter alike, even the men they loved had a lot in common. When they came out of the villa, the sky had already darkened. The bright lights in the distance could not illuminate the quiet and lonely sunset lake. The sky started to drizzle. Chiche hugged, hee, as they strolled leisurely in the rain. There were all kinds of chrysanthemums competing with each other on the winding road. It was the first time he knew that chrysanthemums could bloom so beautifully. In the end, the two of them stopped in front of an ivory-white villa. The manicured lawn was so big that it could almost be used as a golf course. He casually glanced at the house number 100 by the Sunset Lake. He could not help but be secretly speechless. It was too extravagant to buy such a villa in such a place. Not long after the two of them stood still, Aya ran all the way to open the door. She was as excited as a little sparrow. He did not react until she sat on the soft and comfortable sofa. You will live here from now on. He was not at ease with other places. Live here. He pointed in front of her in disbelief. She had known since she was young that every villa by the Sunset Lake was sky-high in price. The deeper she went, the more expensive it became. It was already rare for Fu Juanxing to trap Lungchinga in number 70, but this one was worth 100. She was afraid that even if she had money, she would not be able to buy it. Yes. Chiche saw her silly look, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. The monstrous anger from before also dissipated unconsciously. Whenever he thought of Hee being pregnant with his child, he wanted to laugh and excitedly announce it to the whole world. This kind of joy could not be expressed in words. Even if he was introverted and deep, he could not control his surging heart. That was why Du Ju could not help but look at him strangely along the way. Can you not live here? Subconsciously, he hated this cage that could be said to be made of gold. She did not want to follow in her mother's footsteps and become the second Longchinga. No, Chiche said seriously. You have to live here because this is our home. Home, he muttered to himself in a daze. She had never had a home since she was young. Chiche's eyes flashed with a trace of heartache. Actually, he had always known what he desired the most, but he was ruthless enough to never give it to her. After thinking it through, he nodded slightly. Even if she wanted to be a mother, she probably didn't have the fate. In fact, there were times when she envied her mother. That's great. Chiche hugged her lovingly. His perfect, handsome face was buried in her neck as he deeply smelled her familiar scent. He was as lazy as a puppy. Ache, you seem to be very happy. No matter how slow Hee's reaction was, he realized that Chiche was indeed very different from before. If it was any other day, he might have turned around and left. Du Ju, who was sitting far away on the high chair at the living room counter, nodded in agreement. Today, the CEO seemed to have taken the wrong medicine. It was really very strange. At night, Chiche personally cooked. Looking at the extraordinarily handsome man patiently cooking all kinds of nutritious soup in the kitchen, Su He felt extremely ashamed. She seemed to know nothing. Ache, when did you learn to cook? The hand holding the spoon stopped in midair. Chiche narrowed his eyes slightly and said nonchalantly, in the years after you left. Because he drank daily until his stomach was perforated, he gradually learned how to live alone after coming out of the hospital. Ache must be having a hard time. Right, he hugged him from behind, his cheeks lazily rubbing against his back like a kitten. Chiche felt her heartache, and the smile on his lips deepened. He turned around and pulled her into his embrace, saying in a low voice, Hee, don't ever leave me again, okay? The last time, he had almost gone crazy and only walked out after suffering so much. He could not bear the next time. The slender figure in his embrace suddenly froze. A trace of anger immediately appeared on Chiche's face. He did not understand why he still rejected him from the bottom of her heart. He was obviously very angry, but he perfectly restrained his anger. He was afraid that he would scare her again. Be a good girl and wait in the living room. You can eat later. How about I help you? He felt embarrassed. Who would have thought that the famous CEO Chi would personally cook and be a good man at home? If word got out, his jaw would definitely drop. Do you know how? No. He rolled her eyes and grabbed Chiche's arm, refusing to let go. How about we take a photo? In her memory, They did not seem to have taken a photo together. Without waiting for Chi-Che's reply, he took out his phone from his pocket. The two of them, who were snuggling together, took a few pictures of each other. He looked at them one by one. He was very satisfied with his masterpiece. Although Chi had a cold face, he was secretly laughing in his eyes. Don't think that she couldn't tell. Late at night, the sound of something falling to the ground came from the Chi family's villa in Beijing. Butler Bai pushed the door open and saw Fu Mingyao throwing all the bottles and jars on the dressing table to the ground hysterically. Precious jewels were scattered all over the ground. Among them, a string of pigeon blood ruby bracelets shone brilliantly under the light. Butler Bai's face was gloomy. He closed the door and came in front of Fu Mingyao. This is the Chi family. It's not a place where you can act wantonly. Fu Mingyao sobbed until her makeup was ruined. She raised her head, and her pear-shaped, rainy little face was filled with malevolence and resentment. Just now, she had received news that for that woman, Che actually didn't even bother to return to City A. What exactly was Fu Mingyao in Chi-Che's heart? Butler Bai stood in front of Fu Mingyao and said condescendingly, "Don't be so useless. That slut Suhi will never be able to compare to you. Based on her background and past, Chi-Che will never allow her to marry Chi-Che. Just wait patiently. There's no need for you to make a move. Zhou Huaxiu alone is enough for Su He to endure." Cheng Cheng's surgery finally arrived amidst everyone's nervous anticipation. This day was the last day of November. Many people who graduated from university would never forget the many major events that happened on this day. First, there were overwhelming news reports. The famous Asian diva, the famous singer Lung Fei, had returned from abroad. This time, her return brought the honor of being a famous film festival's best actress. She almost never got off the plane. The airport was surrounded by reporters and fans who had rushed over upon hearing the news. Then, the first hospital affiliated to university changed its owner on this day. The owner of the famous hospital that was worth 10 billion yuan changed again. It was not a high-ranking businessman, nor was it a foreign financial magnate. It was Su He, whom they had never liked. Who would have thought that the girl who used to work to earn tuition fees would become the owner of the hospital that was worth 10 billion yuan today? Perhaps Chi-Che had really gone crazy. There was also the internationally renowned cardiothoracic surgeon, Helen of the Angel's Hand, who had disappeared for a year. She was going to perform surgery on the critically ill little boy in City A. Whether it was at home or abroad, everyone's attention turned to City in an instant. Even the influential circle in Beijing was not calm. In the international airport lobby, the heavenly queen was invincible. Lung Fei had fair porcelain-like skin, an exquisite oval face, and the rarest thing was her imposing air of nobility. From the first day, she entered the entertainment industry. There were people who predicted that she would definitely become famous and surpass Lung Chinga. After 5 years, she finally did it. Her hands that were painted with bright red nails gently took off the exaggerated sunglasses that had a retro feel to it. Her beautiful eyes revealed a gratified smile, and her smile did not change in the face of countless flashes of light. Even if there was no shortage of beautiful women in the entertainment industry, Lung Fei could definitely be called the most beautiful woman in the world. After getting into the nanny van from the exclusive passage under the escort of many assistants, Lung Fei stopped smiling and glared at her personal assistant, Yang Jing, sternly. "Didn't you say that you would come to pick me up? Why didn't you come? Is it because that *TCH Fu Mingyao is causing me trouble again?" No one would have thought that the goddess in the hearts of countless people would really be like this in private. Yang Jing subconsciously flinched and answered hesitantly, "We don't dare to say much about President Xi." Lung Fei's expression eased slightly. Yang Jing was right. She understood Che's character. Even a usually overbearing Qi Qing couldn't control him. But why did Che miss the appointment to pick her up when she left 3 months ago? She had clearly said that she would come back to pick her up when she returned. Che had always been a man of his word. He would not refuse to come without a reason. "President Xi, what is the matter that has delayed you? Did you not ask?" This? Yang Jing lowered her head nervously. She was hesitating on how to explain herself so that Miss Lung would not be angry. What is it? Lung Feifei's sudden impatience gave Yang Jing a fright. She quickly said, as if she was pouring beans out of a bamboo tube, "Today, Dr. Helen personally performed the surgery." President Qi went to the hospital. Who did the surgery for? Lung Feifei raised her thin eyebrows and asked arrogantly. The grandson of President Cheng of the first hospital. As she spoke, she slipped the tablet into Lung Feifei's hands and gestured for her to take a look for herself. Lung Feifei quickly browsed through the webpage. The more she browsed, the uglier her expression became. Finally, she could not help but shout sharply, "Su He? It's actually Su He. She actually has the face to come back." Lung Feifei's impression of Su He had long been deeply engraved in her mind. She was the favored daughter of the heavens, and she had been designated as Qi Che's fiancée by the Qi family since she was young. She had also long considered herself as Qi Che's fiancée. Her beautiful dream since she was young had been ruined by Su He. 5 years ago, she had flown from Beijing to City A. She had originally wanted to give Ache a surprise, but in the end, what she saw was the scene of Su He and Ache deeply kissing under the setting sun. She was so jealous that she went crazy and ran back to the Su family to ask her brother, Su Guining, for help. In the end, Su Guining ruthlessly beat Ache up, but was unable to change his decision. So from then on, she had hated Su He. "Go to the hospital. Immediately go to the hospital," Lung Feifei shouted hysterically. Her sharp voice pierced Yang Jing, causing her to continuously dodge to the side. The first hospital had never been so solemn since the establishment of the hospital. From 7:30 in the morning, everyone came to the hospital early and waited quietly. Time passed by slowly. Everyone's heart was hanging in the air like 15 buckets of water. The operating theater on the 7th floor was the highest-rated operating theater in the hospital. It was equipped with the best medical facilities in the world. The transparent tempered glass on the ceiling allowed people standing on the ceiling to clearly see everything in the operating theater. The large screen on the side could clearly see every tiny detail. At this moment, many people were standing at the railing of the transparent glass upstairs. They were Qi Che, President Cheng, He Fifan, Hao Lianfei, Lung Yinfeng, and Juan Hao. The figure standing in front of them was actually Fu Juanxing, who had not appeared for a long time. Qi Che and Fu Juanxing stood side by side. Their sharp eyes stared at the woman below who was wearing a tight surgical gown. "I didn't expect you to be so talented." Fu Juanxing's voice could not help but have a hint of disappointment. He had spent a lot of effort to train Fu Mingyao since she was young, and he had always been very satisfied with her. Ever since Su He came back, he had lost one-sided. This made him gradually disappointed and dissatisfied. How could Fu Juanxing's daughter be so useless? After observing her for a full 5 hours, even with his nitpicking, he could not help but praise Su He for really living up to the name of the angel hand. During the surgery, she seemed to have changed into a different person. As the chief surgeon, every cut and every movement during the surgery was crisp, precise, and fast. There was no hesitation at all. The tiny and fragile arteries and atria seemed to have been rehearsed countless times in front of her. The blonde and blue-eyed first nurse seemed to have a spiritual connection with her. They had an unparalleled rapport. They used all kinds of surgical instruments, and their hands flew like the wind, making people gasp in admiration. Fu Juanxing pondered for a moment. Perhaps he could consider letting Su He be the chief surgeon for his surgery. He actually came here today with the same idea. Qi Che also stared at the scene below without blinking. When he heard Fu Juanxing's words, he frowned and smiled wryly. "I didn't expect it either." The person who didn't even dare to enter the laboratory in school was actually so powerful. If he had known that he would be like this, he wouldn't have helped her avoid all sorts of experimental classes in the first place. "When is the wedding scheduled?" Fu Juanxing suddenly changed the topic. "I spoke to your father on the phone last night and have already preliminarily confirmed the date of the wedding." A trace of displeasure flashed through young Master Chi's deep eyes. In the past, he didn't care who the person he married was, so he could easily give Meng Yao an identity. However, he didn't want to do that now. He was an illegitimate daughter. He absolutely wouldn't allow the child he had with he to be called an illegitimate daughter by others. There won't be a wedding. After the surgery, he would bring he back to Beijing. Fu Juanxing sneered and said disapprovingly, Chi-Che, you're still too young. You don't understand that sometimes it's not something you can do just because you don't want to. He had plenty of ways to make this wedding happen, but he didn't want to go too far yet. Compared to when he first took a liking to Chi-Che, he hoped that Chi-Che would become his successor and make this first position in his hands more eye-catching. Forcing it too quickly would only backfire. Chi-Che raised his eyebrows disapprovingly, his heart unconsciously becoming more alert. Although this old fox, Fu Juanxing, had retired for many years, his prestige was still there. He absolutely could not be underestimated. How's the old chief's health? Fu Juanxing changed the topic at the right time. I was originally planning to go to Beijing to visit him, but who knew that my own health was no longer of use. I've been in the hospital for some time now, so I've been delayed. A trace of surprise flashed through Chi-Che's eyes. Fu Juanxing had been unyielding and cold in the business world for decades. It was hard to imagine that he would be seriously ill in the hospital. Grandfather's body is fine, Chi-Che replied briefly. The surgery that the two of them were talking about finally reached the final stage of suturing. Under the high-definition camera, Su He's eyes that were exposed outside the mask were almost wet with sweat. There was a special nurse who wiped her sweat. Such an intricate and complicated surgery could not deviate from the procedure in the slightest. Fifin turned his gaze to the high-definition video and watched he's every move from a closer distance. He was calm and steady. Every move of his hand, which was wearing a special glove, was completed in one go. The hemostatic forceps followed closely behind the moment the aorta was cut, and the speed was so fast that it was breathtaking. These hands were indeed worthy of being called the hands of an angel. Fifin staggered a step in despair. He truly realized that his strength was far inferior to Su He's. Even if he worked hard for 30 years, it would be impossible for him to reach her speed and familiarity. Doug crossed his arms over his chest with a calm expression. Everyone who saw Helen's surgery for the first time had this expression, especially those who were also surgeons. No one would not be shocked. Helen's talent is indeed amazing. Even Professor Angus is envious. Fifin's face was frighteningly pale. His eyes were fixed on the screen. What do you think about me putting down the scalpel in the future? Doug was shocked. You wouldn't be so traumatized, would you? Fifin nodded. He remembered what the head doctor of the psychology department said yesterday. Fifin, you'd better come for treatment. Otherwise, you won't be able to stand on the operating table as the chief surgeon for the rest of your life. In the past, I hated Su He the most. I despised her, looked down on her, and even helped others to set her up. After being traumatized by the person he despised the most, he really didn't even have the courage to hold the scalpel. Doug sighed inwardly. Fifin would not be suitable to hold a scalpel in the future if he could not get past this hurdle in his heart. Seeing that the final suture was completed, Fifin turned around and left resolutely. The resignation letter was already placed on President Cheng's desk. He needed to return to Beijing to have a good rest. The moment the automatic door of the operating theater opened, countless claps rang out in the corridor. He nodded with a calm expression. She had encountered many things, and she had long developed a calm composure. Even if the whole world applauded her, she would only feel gratified, however. She did not have a trace of happiness. Stepping out of the operating theater, a huge dizziness assaulted her. He suddenly fell forward. Fortunately, a pair of strong arms caught her in time and hugged her tightly. Everyone gasped. Fu Juanxing could not help but have an ugly expression on his face. The son-in-law-to-be, did not know how to restrain himself in front of his father-in-law. It seemed that he did not care about Meng Yao. He leaned weakly into Chi-Che's embrace and shook his head. I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while because I'm highly stressed. Chi frowned worriedly. He wished he could use all the medical equipment he had to examine He. President Chung, I'll have to trouble you to arrange for the best doctor to examine He. President Chung jumped in fright. He didn't have the time to look at his grandson and hurriedly went forward to say, "Don't be too nervous. Let He rest well first. This kind of surgery really consumes a lot of energy." The surrounding people nodded in agreement. They were all tensed up from watching. Even if they relaxed now, they would feel tired, let alone the executor of the surgery. Be good, then sleep well for a while. Chi gently coaxed her by her ear. He carried her in his arms and left openly. The flashlights on the way were so blinding that people could not open their eyes. Countless reporters swarmed over, but they were afraid that Chi-Chi's influence would not dare to get too close and offend the demon god in front of them. They could only make way for him and throw out the most curious question in their hearts when they passed by him. "President Xi, may I ask what is the relationship between you and Miss Su now? May I ask, has President Xi and Miss Su rekindled their old relationship? You've given 10 billion assets to Miss Su with both hands. Are you planning to use it as a betrothal gift? Such a high-priced betrothal gift has shocked the entertainment industry. It's enough for you to marry a royal princess." Chi nodded indifferently. To him, he was more precious than any princess. "May I ask, when are you planning to hold your wedding?" At this time, everyone actually shut up about Fu Mingyao. Chi-Chi's lips curled into a faint smile. He suddenly stopped. He liked the betrothal gift this time. When others saw him stop, they were at a loss. In their impression, President Xi wasn't some kind-hearted person who cared about the media. As someone who controlled the entire entertainment industry, he could easily crush any media outlet. The wedding ceremony will inform everyone to drink the wedding wine. The usually indifferent and cold person suddenly dropped such a polite sentence, causing the media reporters who were used to all kinds of occasions to be stunned. They looked at each other for a long time before they could react. It wasn't until President Chung led the people away that they realized what was happening. For a moment, the corridor was in an uproar. Everyone picked up their phones to inform the company. When he woke up, she found that she was actually on the plane. She had no memory of how she got on the plane. "Do you want to eat something?" The man who had been sitting at the side hurriedly handed her a cup of hot milk and personally fed it to her to drink. "Where are you going?" Seeing that she had obediently finished drinking the milk, Chi put down his life in satisfaction. He scratched her little nose and said dotingly, "We'll be in Beijing in half an hour." He looked around and found that although the cabin was luxurious and high-end, it was not as big as usual. Du Ju, who had just sat in the back seat with a frown, quickly replied, "It's the CEO's private jet. This is our CEO's private jet. It usually stops at the top floor of the Zifeng building." He suddenly understood. He secretly looked at Chi, who had a clearly happy expression, and asked in a low voice, "Ah Che, aren't you angry with me anymore?" His sudden change really made her uncomfortable. Chi raised his brows and asked seriously, "You want to see me angry?" "Of course not." He quickly shook his head and said in distress, "Meng Yao will be sad if you do this. Compare her to now that she's pregnant with your child." Chi felt so stifled in his heart that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He had never seen anyone dumber than her. She was obviously pregnant herself, yet she didn't know how to care for others. Instead, she was worried for others. "Don't worry. She'll be fine. She's healthier than you." His body really made him worry. Several times, he fainted and was tortured until he almost broke down. The small private plane landed in a manner. A few outstanding men stood on the temporary tarmac, waiting for the two of them calmly. Tang Yi was grinning from ear to ear as he walked out of the crowd. He wanted to pounce on Su He and give him a hug, but he was stuck in the middle by Chi. "Do you want to die an even more miserable death?" A certain man threatened in a sinister manner. Tang Yi glared at him unwillingly and could only turn around to introduce him to his companions. "Everyone, this is the famous Su He. She was the one who charmed Chi until he lost his mind." His words were filled with pride. He had long been used to Tang Yi's frivolity. He could not help but smile at the sight. His charming and pure dual-polarity temperament perfectly blended together. At this moment, just because of a smile, it actually blossomed into a stunning charm. The few people who had seen He for the first time could not help but have a thought. They looked at each other and saw a thick sense of amazement in each other's eyes. No wonder it would make Ache, who had always been cold, unable to forget it. He glared at Tang Yi coldly. With a glance, Chiche held He and walked up to the man with an outstanding temperament and a powerful aura that caused one's heart to tremble. He introduced, "This is Su Guining. I've grown up since I was young. He's also my future brother-in-law." Su Guining, He's originally indifferent expression instantly froze on his face. His hand that was holding Chi trembled slightly, and his limpid eyes stared blankly at Su Guining. Could it be that Chi's woman had taken a liking to young master Su? Thinking of this possibility, the others couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Su He. Seeing Chi's increasingly dark expression, the others pretended to cough and turn around. Chiche suddenly held He tightly in his arms and whispered into her ear, "Remember, you're my woman now, so you can't be fickle, especially Su Guining. You can't afford to offend him." He finally reacted and asked uncertainly, "May I ask if you're old Chief Su's grandson, Su Guining?" If his mother knew that she had met Su Guining today, she would definitely be very happy, right? The cold-faced Su Guining frowned in confusion. Although the girl in front of him looked at him with a fiery gaze, she didn't make him feel disgusted like the others. Instead, she gave him a familiar feeling. However, after searching through his memory, he didn't find that he had met her before. "Have we met before?" The cold and steady voice was like a natural leader, making people feel convinced from the bottom of their hearts. Tang Yi gloated and whistled loudly. He had never seen young master Su strike up a conversation with a girl before. The others all laughed. "I don't think you've met before." Chiche's expression couldn't be any uglier. Su Guining finally realized that his future brother-in-law was jealous. Thinking of Fu Mingyao, who Qing had brought with him yesterday, he couldn't help but worry about Su He in front of him. Su He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to compete with Fu Mingyao. "Nice to meet you for the first time. You're the first person Che personally brought back." Tang Yi stared at the few people who came with him, tongue-tied. When did Su Guining become so friendly and polite to others? It did not look like it. All right. I still have to visit the old chief later. Don't delay any longer. Otherwise, my grandfather will beat me to death." Tang Yi urged everyone in an exaggerated manner, causing them to laugh and scold him. "You deserve to be beaten to death." Deep in the manor where the plane was parked was the most famous and mysterious sanatorium in Beijing. It was also the most heavily guarded sanatorium. The only few old chief officers that remained would come here for regular checkups. The medical staff that accompanied them were basically all transferred from here. If Ififan had not handed in his resignation letter at this time, he might have come in under the name of the medical team. He was not the chief's grandson's girlfriend. No, perhaps she was not even considered girlfriend. The doctor in Grandfather Chi's ward was doing his daily routine checkup. "Where's that kid from the He family?" It was Ififan who came every year at this time, and this year there was a sudden change of person which surprised the old man. The middle-aged doctor quickly replied respectfully, "Sir, doctor, he took a long leave this year. I'm afraid he won't be working for a short period of time." That kid, Ififan, probably has to lose his mind to be willing to leave his job, right? Chi-Ching teased from the side. Back then, Ififan even ran away from home in order to attend medical school. How could he be willing to give up being a doctor? No one would believe him if he told others. 3 black lines appeared on the middle-aged doctor's forehead. Both parties were people he could not afford to offend. He did not know how to answer and could only find an excuse to leave. "Grandfather, do you feel better today?" Chi-Ching-Ching's grandfather's face was full of concern. Recently, she had also applied for a long leave from the army because of her grandfather's illness. It's always like this when you're older. Having lived to this point, he had already seen through life and death. There was a grave expression on Chi-Ching-Ching's wrinkled face. If it was not for the family, he would not want to display his incompetence by lying on a hospital bed. The older a person was, the more he wouldn't admit defeat. Knock, knock, knock. There was a clear knock on the door. A man in a straight military uniform came to the bed and gave a standard military salute. Reporting to the chief, young Master Che has returned, and... Returned what? Old Master Chi's voice unconsciously raised a few notches, causing people to feel a sense of majesty that came from the bottom of their hearts. He even brought Miss Sue. Young Master Tang brought people to the airport to welcome him, and even young Master Su went. Su Guining, Su Guining. Two surprised voices sounded at the same time. Su Guining's appearance in person meant that the Su family supported Aceh in Beijing. If even the Su family agreed to it, which family would dare to oppose it? Qi Qing immediately flew into a rage. Aceh is too much. What's worse is Su Guining. Isn't he reluctant to leave the army? Why did he come back when he had nothing better to do? Chi Che's first move this time really made old Master Chi angry. Don't let Su He appear in front of me. Not being able to marry Lung Fei was already his biggest concession. It was simply impossible for the family to accept Su He. Yes. At the elevator entrance on the first floor, Su He firmly held onto the railing and refused to walk forward. Chi Che gestured for the few of them to go up first and then asked worriedly, "What's wrong? Why aren't you leaving?" "I can't go see Grandpa Qi so rashly. I think he definitely doesn't want to see me." Chi Che pondered for a moment. Grandpa's heart wasn't good and indeed couldn't defend against a blow. "Take a rest in the hall and wait for me to come out obediently." Stroking her soft hair, Chi Che turned around and left. He half lay on the sofa in the hall and fell asleep in a daze. It wasn't until a series of loud footsteps rang out that she was immediately awakened by the orderly footsteps. She originally thought it was Aceh. When she raised her head, what entered her eyes was actually an energetic old man. He was standing in the lead position. Although his movements were slow, every step was steady, powerful, and unwavering. Su He was stunned. When she realized what was happening, she had already rushed out to block the path of the old man and his group. Su Guining was frowning and looking at her with displeasure. She did not expect herself to be so impulsive. Perhaps subconsciously, she also knew that this was a rare opportunity. If she had not followed Aceh here, she would not have had the chance to get close to him. She remembered that 5 years ago, when her mother first took out a photo of the old man and told her about her past and story, she was so shocked that she could not come back to her senses for a long time. It was not worth it for her mother, and she felt even more sorry for her mother. She gave up on such an illustrious family. What she got was actually Fu Juanqing's life imprisonment. So at that time, she secretly carved the old man's appearance deep in her mind and secretly swore that one day she would definitely ask for her grandfather's forgiveness. She would let her mother return to the family and completely get rid of Fu Juanqing. Now that the opportunity was right in front of her, how could she not be excited? "Who is it? Drag her away." The assistant at the side was already dissatisfied. Facing the few people who wanted to forcefully drag her away, Su He stubbornly stood where he was. He stubbornly looked at the old man and begged, "Old chief, can you let me say a few words? I promise that I won't waste your time." The dignified-looking old man stared at her with a pair of eyes that had long seen through the affairs of the world. He actually didn't say anything for a long time. Su Guining, who was following behind the old man, had a trace of doubt and confusion on his handsome and bewitching face. He secretly shot a few glances at his subordinates. His subordinates helplessly shrugged at him. Just now, Su He was personally brought in by Chi Che, so he couldn't be too ruthless. If he offended the Su family, it didn't matter, but he wouldn't be able to endure it. "Miss Su, you seem to have stopped the wrong person." Su Guining reminded her unhappily, hinting that she should be looking for the Chi family and not his Su family. "Your surname is Su?" the old voice asked in surprise. He quickly nodded and looked at the old man without blinking. "As stubborn as your mother." The old man's voice carried a hint of loneliness. The girl in front of him was too similar. Her eyes were exactly the same. How could she still not understand Suhi's background? The surprise in Su Guining's eyes was even more severe. His grandfather had retired for many years, and even some of his old comrades' children and grandchildren were no longer seen. How could he know Su He? Old chief, I beg of you. If I don't tell you, it will take too much of your time. With Hee Hee's pride, being able to make her say this request was already her bottom line. The old man let out a long sigh and ordered, "All of you go outside and wait for me. For the time being, no one is allowed to come in here." His words actually implied that he wanted to seal off the entire hall. Old chief, the doctor and assistant at the side called out worriedly. Grandfather. Su Guining was also a little worried. After all, his grandfather's identity was too important. He could not allow any mishaps to happen. The old man glared at him, and in an instant, the intimidating aura of a golden spear made everyone's hearts tremble. They quickly went out to carry out the order. The entire hall was cleared out. He secretly felt that it was funny. So this was the so-called power. Sometimes, a word was really more effective than money. The old man sat down on the sofa with a swagger. His sharp gaze stared at Hee Hee, and his gaze was complicated. After a long while, he asked, "Are you Qing Ji's daughter?" "Yes." He quickly nodded. A rare trace of loneliness appeared on the old man's face. If Qing Ge had not left the family, how could her own biological granddaughter have met her grandfather and only called him old chief? "Tell me your purpose of coming here." Hee Hee was stunned. She did not expect the old chief to ask so directly and straightforwardly. The first time they met, they did not meet again after a long separation as they had imagined. The only thing, they were cold and distant. Perhaps Mother's willful and unruly behavior in the past had completely hurt her relationship with her family. Mother has been through a lot these years. I beg you to forgive her. Please forgive her on account that Mother is your biological daughter. After hesitating for a moment, she did not call out the word grandfather in the end. A look of grief flashed across the old chief's face before he turned around and rejected her unyieldingly. Don't even think about it. When she left the family, she had already cut off all ties with the family. Even if Su Qingge, this unfilial daughter, died outside, my Su family would never have any objections. In my heart, she had already died 20 years ago. How can I forgive a person who has already died 20 years ago? Hee's vision suddenly turned black as she fell to the ground in despair. Her beautiful little face was as white as blood. Old chief, I beg you. Mother really needs the Su family. If even the Su family cannot accept her, I don't know how Mother will spend the rest of her life suffering. Her voice was filled with grief. He actually cried until she could not speak. She thought about how she would die soon and how her mother, who had been homeless for half a lifetime, would lose her only daughter. She could not imagine how her mother, who looked arrogant and stubborn on the outside but had a soft heart, would spend the rest of her life. Mother would definitely go crazy. She did not want her mother to become the next Wen Ling. She did not want her mother to be hospitalized because of the same man. When she was young, she had made an agreement with her mother. In the future, no one would give up on each other, and no one would leave each other. Now that she was going to break the agreement and leave before her mother, she really could not rest assured. As a daughter, her only hope was to make her mother happy. The old man's expression showed a hint of reluctance, but it was just that he could not bear it. He had been heartbroken to Su Qingge since 20 years ago. Ever since his wife was worried that his daughter would fall ill, the entire family would never forgive Su Qingge again. Old chief, I beg you. I beg you to forgive Mother, okay? He suddenly knelt down on both knees and moved step by step towards the old man, pleading bitterly. If you want me to forgive her, you have to let my wife come back to life. The old man's expression was actually very overbearing at this moment. It was not that he had not thought about his daughter for more than 20 years, but along with the longing, it was often accompanied by more disappointment and hatred. Old Madame Su, her eyes, which were originally shining with hope, suddenly dimmed after she recalled what had happened. Old Madame Su had passed away many years ago. Even if she was really a godly doctor, it was impossible. Moreover, the reason why her mother was so resolute back then was because the Su family had used her marriage as a political marriage. She only wanted to pursue her own happiness, but she didn't dare to say this out loud. She could only feel injustice for her mother in her heart. Old chief, life is short. Do you really want to have any regrets and personally cut off the only way to live for your own daughter? The mother and daughter were both forced into a dead end. The only one who could help their mother get rid of Fu Juanxing was the Su family. Perhaps Ah-Che could, but she already owed Ah-Che too much. Old chief, I'm begging you. After all, mother is your biological daughter. I don't dare to ask you for anything, nor do I dare to hope to return to the Su family. I only hope that the Su family can give mother a little help when necessary. That will be enough. This won't affect any of the Su family's interests. He knelt on the ground, unable to get up. She tugged at the old man's clothes and begged bitterly. As long as you agree to help mother, I'm willing to do anything. I'm begging you. A trace of impatience appeared on the old man's face. He had been unhindered all his life. Since when did he need to make a deal with a little girl? However, it was rare for the little girl to not be afraid of him. Fei had grown up in the Su family since she was young, and when she saw him, she still could not help but be cautious. This point was obvious. She was indeed worthy of being the child of the Su family. Speaking of which, you're my biological granddaughter. It's impossible for the Su family to forgive your mother. If you want to return to the Su family, I can fulfill your wish. This was his biggest concession. After all, the child was innocent. This child immediately caught his eye. He closed her eyes in pain, and crystal-clear tears dripped from her long eyelashes onto the old man's hands. The scalding temperature made the old man furrow his white eyebrows slightly. She wanted her mother to return to the Su family, not herself. To her, it was the same no matter where she went. If the outcome could not be changed, she could only accept it. This kind of begging was her biggest bottom line, and she could not do anything else. Speaking of which, with her mother's strong character, she would rather break than bend. If that day she found out that she had done this, she would definitely be very sad. Even if her mother was wrong, she would definitely be wrong to the end. Thank you, but I don't need it. She only recognized her mother, not the Su family. He stood up from the ground as if he had lost his soul. Himi walked towards the main door in a daze. Every step he took was slow, as if it was heavy. From behind, he looked so frail that it actually made one's heart ache. Su Guining, who had been anxiously waiting outside, saw Su He coming out from afar. The moment the two of them passed each other, Su Guining's eyes flashed with a thick sense of surprise. Su He's expression was so desperate that it made one's heart ache. He hurriedly walked into the hall. The old man, sitting on the sofa, had a solemn expression on his face. The hand that was holding the walking stick was trembling faintly. Su Guining hurriedly rushed forward and squatted in front of the old man. "Grandfather, were you feeling unwell? Do you want Director Li to help you investigate?" He waved his hand weakly and was speechless for a long while. Su Guining's brows were tightly knitted. He gave a hint to his assistant beside him before turning around to give his father a call and briefly recount what had happened just now. Su Xiaoyun's solemn voice came from inside. "What exactly is the identity of that girl? Go and investigate properly. I'll go back tomorrow." After hanging up the phone, Su Guining suddenly thought of Su He's expression when he left. He felt uneasy and hurriedly called Chi. In the ward, Old Master Chi roared angrily. "I order you to cut off all ties with Su He immediately." Chi had been standing in front of the hospital bed without moving. His neat suit accentuated his loose figure. "Grandfather, if you really force me this much, I don't mind being a second Su Chinga." Chi's words startled Old Master Chi. It took him a long time to react. He pointed at him with trembling fingers and said bitterly, Your wings have hardened." "Grandfather." Chi interrupted him very straightforwardly and said with an apologetic expression, "Grandfather, please calm down first. I'll come back to see you tomorrow." Old children. The older they got, the more they looked like children. In his rage, Grandfather was completely unreasonable. At this moment, Duju suddenly pushed open the door and entered. He gave Old Master Chi an awkward military salute before passing the phone to Chi. In fact, he had been listening to old Master Chi's valiant swearing outside. For the first time in his life, he realized that his CEO actually had such a good temper. He really couldn't imagine it. Ache, Su-hee went out alone just now. He seemed to be in a very bad state. Su Gwinning subconsciously skipped over the conversation between Su Hee and the Su family's old man. With the Su family's old man's current status, a casual conversation would be of great importance. In his heart, he always felt that things were not simple. Thank you. After hanging up the phone, Chi-Che's expression became even gloomier. Grandfather, rest well. I have something to take care of at the last minute, so I'll leave first. After coming out of the ward, Chi-Che immediately dialed Su-Hee's cell phone. It rang over and over again for a long time until his patience was almost worn out before it was picked up. Over there. These two short words made even Du-Ju, who was beside him, feel his heart skip a beat. His own president had already broken down. Ache. Su-Hee's voice sounded a little lost. He was stunned for a long while before reacting. He smiled foolishly and said, Ache, are you angry? Very good. He even knew that he was angry. He wanted to let her know the consequences of making him angry. Stay there and don't move. I'll go over right away. After hanging up the phone, Chi-Che turned on the tracking system on his phone. The little red that kept flashing on the map was surprisingly Su-Hee's current location. President, you're really awesome. Du-Ju couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. He actually installed a tracking device. He had to be impressed who said that President Chi was cold and heartless. He would definitely beat him to death. Looking at the flashing little red dot, Chi-Che's lips curled into a faint smile. In the future, even if she ran to the ends of the earth, he would still capture her. In the ward, old Master Chi watched his precious grandson leave in a huff. He was so angry that he blew his beard and glared at him. While cursing at his unfilial grandson, he called in his personal guard. Go, you must bring Su-Hee to me before Ache. He must see what kind of woman could make Ache fall head over heels for her. In the Fu Corporation's hotel chain, Fu Mengyao was currently enjoying the presidential suite with the best view. Her slender fingers kept swiping across the tablet in front of her. All of it was news about Lung Fei-Fei. The style of the Asian diva is really different. Butler Bai glanced at her coldly and said disdainfully, if it weren't for the Su family's backing, she wouldn't even be qualified to carry your shoes. Fu Mengyao stared at the woman on the screen, who was smiling sweetly. Her lips curled into a cold smile. But Che is very good to her. He almost pampers her to the heavens. He entered the entertainment industry because of her. They grew up together as childhood sweethearts. Over the past 5 years, she had been jealous of Lung Fei-Fei. Butler Bai shook his head disapprovingly. So what? For the past 5 years, you've always treated Lung Fei-Fei as your most powerful opponent. In fact, the only person who has truly affected you is Su-Hee. And Bai, I'm tired. I don't want to see Su-Hee affect my mood every time he comes. Fu Mengyao covered her abdomen with both hands. Her expression was gentle, but her words made people's hair stand on end. Butler Bai was also shocked. Even Wen Ling had never been so ruthless when dealing with Long Chinga. If he's too ruthless, I'm afraid Mr. Fu won't be able to explain himself. At the mention of Fu Jianxing, Fu Mingyao's originally indifferent expression disappeared. No matter what, the person she feared the most in her heart was still Fu Jianxing. Su-Hee came with Che this time. Immediately send someone to bring her to see me, Fu Mengyao ordered domineeringly. She had already been gentle and low-key for too long. If this still couldn't keep Che's heart, she didn't mind revealing her true nature. At this moment, in the Chi family's old residence, Zhou Huaxiu had declined all the invitations and was instructing the servants to clean the room and trim the garden, preparing to bring the old master home. Mom! Chi-Ching excitedly ran all the way through the fountain from the main entrance and arrived at the glass greenhouse. What's with all the yelling? I meant to say that Che brought Su-Hee back to Beijing. Don't you want to meet him? Zhou Huaxiu straightened her expression. She was indeed a little curious about Su-Hee. What kind of woman could charm Che? From the fact that she could not find out her detailed information, it was definitely not simple. She had seen countless people in her life. No matter how powerful a person was, they could not escape her sharp eyes. Go, kidnap him for me. As the mistress of this family, she needed to show her power. Yes. Chi-Ching gloated and saluted, not forgetting to say obsequiously, Mom, you should have brought out your past glory long ago, so that others can see how you are so outstanding. Zhou Huaxiu glanced at her in annoyance. Go away. I still have to go see Meng Yao later. Don't bother me if there's nothing else. Although she was also outstanding in the past, she was far from being outstanding. The one who was truly outstanding in this generation was Su Qingge. Even after decades, she believed that no one could erase her existence from their hearts. Okay, she was not interested in other things. As for robbing people, she was very good at it. Finding a person was not something that could be done in a matter of minutes. The deep winter in Beijing was so cold that Su Hehe could not accept it. Walking on the streets, even if he wrapped his coat tightly, it still could not block the cold wind. Su Hehe stood in front of the glass window of the coffee shop in a daze. Inside, the lovers in love were whispering to each other. Their smiles were so bright and beautiful that she could not bear to look away for a moment. Carefree. It was so good to have a lot of time in youth. Thinking of old Chief Su's righteous rejection today, the worry on Hehe's brows became even more serious. He leaned against the window tiredly and was lost in thought. The Su family did not support them. They simply did not have the ability to compete with Fu Jianxing. She worked so hard, but she still could not change her mother's fate. No, there was still one person who could help. If she went to beg Ache, as her only last wish after death, Ache definitely would not refuse. But how cruel was this to Ache? She had already let him down. She could not let Ache go even after she died. Ache, what should she do? Miss, it's too cold outside. Do you want to go in? The waiter in the coffee shop observed her for a long time and found that she had been maintaining a single movement for a long time. He couldn't help but ask worriedly. The person leaning against the window still didn't move. The waiter carefully pushed her, but she was caught off guard and fell to the ground. The waiter was so scared that his face lost all color. Suddenly, a strong arm caught the unconscious person in time. When the waiter patted his chest to calm himself down, he was suddenly struck by a sharp knife eye. He was so scared that his back broke out in cold sweat. Chi-Che's face was frighteningly gloomy. Damn it, if it weren't for the fact that he had to get rid of the other groups of people, he wouldn't have arrived so late. He called out in a low voice a few times. The crystal-like person in front of him closed her eyes tightly. Her small hands unconsciously grabbed his collar tightly and refused to let go. Chi-Che felt his heart ache so much that he couldn't breathe. He nervously carried her into the car. Wow, so handsome. The waiters in the cafe all ran to the door and exclaimed with a face full of infatuation. The heater in the car was turned on at full power. Chi-Che hugged Hehe tightly in his arms and gently kissed her face and forehead until he felt her body temperature gradually return to normal. Only then did he relax. Have you found out? Who are they? Speaking of serious matters, Chi-Che actually laughed out of anger. His ink-black eyes were deep. Had he left Beijing for too long and thought that Chi-Che was a vegetarian? I'm alive again. I'll keep updating in the future. Du Ju stole a glance at his president from the rearview mirror and secretly felt that things were not going well. This was going to be a big move. There are a total of 4 batches. They're the old master, the eldest Miss Fu, and one more. At the mention of the last one, Du Ju did not know how to open his mouth for a moment, because he could not figure out why that person would send someone to kidnap Miss Su. It's Su Gwinning, right? Chi-Che asked calmly as he gently brushed away He's beautiful hair that hung in front of his eyes. He felt that Su Gwinning was looking at He with a lot of surprise the first time they met. As for the phone call after that, it wasn't Su Gwinning's usual style at all. Du Ju hurriedly nodded. Capture all the people my sister sent and spread the word. Say that it was young Master Su who captured them and then detained Meng Yao's people. Chi-Che's words were calm, while Du Ju's heart trembled when he heard it. President, Isn't your move too sinister? Young Master Su is your future brother-in-law. Duju's forehead broke out in cold sweat as he carefully drove. He stared at Chi-Che's expression through the rearview mirror. He really couldn't tell that he was joking at this time. Moreover, he wasn't in the mood to joke, so he could only smile bitterly. President, this is Beijing. The situation is too complicated. A single incident will affect the whole body. Moreover, the people sent by young Master Su and the eldest miss aren't easy to deal with. Those two people were domineering and could never be taken advantage of. Chi-Che pondered for a moment. His fingers gently caressed He's black lips, and his eyes revealed suppressed pain and pain. After a long while, he turned his head and glanced at Duju. He said in a slightly disappointed tone, "It's a pity that you've been with me for so long." His words implied that he was too timid. Duju instantly nodded in shame. Sometimes, he really couldn't keep up with the CEO's unrestrained and unrestrained methods. Don't touch Grandpa's men. When you send people, just say that it's Grandpa's order. Duju's eyes lit up when he heard this. How could he be so stupid? He actually didn't think of this method. To others, the CEO said that it was the old man who said it, so others definitely didn't dare to think too much about it. Chi-Che glanced at Duju with disdain and impatiently urged him, "Drive faster. Have Fifin bring his lousy medical team to my Villa number 3 and wait there." Duju was dumbstruck. If you do this at this time, aren't you stabbing a knife into young Master He's heart? Young Master, he still had the nerve to face Miss Su. He probably wished he could hide far away. If he were to come and treat Miss Su's illness, he would probably fly into a rage out of humiliation. "Why don't we have my family's family doctor come? Do you think that's possible?" Chi-Che said with a faint smile. Duju hurriedly nodded. He suddenly realized that Chi-Che's eyes were filled with anger and his voice suddenly turned cold. This is a chance for him to atone for his sins. If he doesn't want to look too ugly, he can choose not to come. Duju was in a dilemma. Could he choose not to give young Master He this chance? Looking at the president's determined expression, he was afraid that this opportunity was given. He didn't know if young Master He would be able to endure it. The call went through. Fifin's voice sounded very dull and a trace of surprise. "What's the matter?" "Miss Su is sick. Our president wants you to bring your medical team to his Villa number 3 to see Miss Su." It was said that a crafty rabbit had 3 burrows. Chi-Che's residence in Beijing alone was far more than 3 burrows, so as time passed, they would be differentiated by the number of burrows. In the end, Fifin still came to Villa number 3. He brought his assistant with a medical kit. When he opened her eyes, she saw Fifin with an unsightly and complicated expression. This made her think of the first time she had just returned. Ache had called Fifin to the villa to treat her. He had the same expression now. He was filled with unwillingness and awkwardness. Actually, her heart was also filled with complicated awkwardness. She knew that Fifin's attitude this time was definitely different from the last time, but she didn't want to do anything. In fact, sometimes she really was a bad woman. Seeing Fifin like this, she actually gloated over his misfortune. He really felt that his heart was broken. He was clearly suffering to the point of death, yet he could still think of so many things. Chi-Che had been standing by the bedside the whole time. His eyes lit up, and he held He's hand gently and meticulously. The corners of his lips curled up into a faint smile as he said with concern, "How is it? Are you feeling unwell? Let young Master He take a good look. See if you need to go to the hospital." Actually, the medical facilities here were very complete back then. The old master liked the autumn maple leaves here. He would come here occasionally in autumn, so he specially prepared it. However, he was still a little worried. Fifin's expression became even more unsightly. The way young Master He addressed him was polite but distant. He shook his head in panic and unconsciously tightened his grip on Chi-Che's hand. His nails dug deeply into his palm. "Ache, I don't want it." If Fifin were to personally investigate, he would definitely discover the truth that she had painstakingly concealed. At that time, she didn't know how to end things. This would ruin her plan. She had long planned for the end of her life to be accompanied by her mother alone. She would find a beautiful place and rest here forever. Then, She would let her mother announce to the outside world that she would marry far away and live happily ever after. He's rejection caused Chi-Che's entire body to exude an oppressive aura. He frowned and said without a doubt, "You must treat me obediently today, or else." Those words were drowned out by his unexpected kiss. This kiss came suddenly, and the surrounding people drew in their breaths in unison. He really didn't expect young Master Chi to have such a side to him in private. He felt dizzy from the kiss. It wasn't until Ah-Che bit her lips that she suddenly woke up. This bite wasn't too heavy, but it was definitely not light. The originally dark green color of her lips instantly became red, swollen, and gorgeous. Just like the bright peach blossoms in March, it made her look even more magnificent. The surrounding servants couldn't help but stare at her. Chi-Che nodded in satisfaction. Yes, this was much better. He's dark green color really made him dislike her. He complained to him with tears in her eyes. "How could you bite me?" In the past, she was the one who bit him. When did it become his turn to bite her? Chi-Che raised his brows and said happily, "This is only the lightest punishment. Obediently see the doctor." 3 black lines appeared on Du-Ju's forehead. Yes, this was indeed the most intimate punishment. Cough, cough. "Can we begin?" Fifin finally couldn't stand any more. Chi-Che's performance not only made him dumbstruck, it also made him regret it endlessly. Growing up together, he actually didn't know that Ah-Che actually had such a shameless and childish side. Love was indeed a blind thing. If he had known that Ahche had already treated Su He to such an extent, he wouldn't have stopped him and wouldn't have done many things that he would regret later on. Du-Ju threw a stethoscope at him. He finally knew, right his gaze, then simply disappeared. He knew too well Ah-Che's tyrannical and black-bellied personality. He knew that he wouldn't give in now. As long as Fifin placed the stethoscope on her chest, everything would be exposed. After thinking about it, he decided that it wouldn't be cool to lose his life. He could only make up his mind, "As a doctor, I know my body. There's really no need to examine it." Fifin staggered back 2 steps. He really didn't have the qualifications to treat the angel's hand. Then, without waiting for Chi-Che to speak, he directly interrupted and said with his eyes closed, "Actually, I'm pregnant." Chi-Che's anxious heart finally relaxed. This was great. As long as he was willing to say it, it meant that she was willing to give birth to this child for him. This was great, this was great. His slender hands trembled as he held her hands. The smile on the corner of his mouth grew wider and wider until it finally turned into a silly smile. The gasps in the room became even louder. Du-Ju was about to close the door when he slipped and almost fell. He finally found a reason why the CEO was in such a good mood these 2 days. Fifin's face was as pale as a sheet. He left the room unsteadily. There was no reason for him to stay here any longer. I'm going to be a father. I'm actually going to be a father too." Chi-Che was as happy as a child. He hugged, and shouted happily. He wished he could announce it to the whole world. Finally, after thinking hard for a while, he said seriously to Du-Ju, "Go, donate 100 million to a charity fund for me." 100 million, how generous. Du-Ju silently left the room. He already saw the president of the charity fund waving at him with a chrysanthemum-like smile. He felt a sharp pain in his heart when he saw Ah-Che's excited expression. He wanted to cry, but he couldn't shed a single tear. In fact, she really wanted to give birth to this child, even if she had to risk her life to protect this child. Perhaps the heavens would perform this miracle for her. Even though Fifin had left, Chi-Che was still worried. He was a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he was also a doctor who had suffered a heavy blow. He was unreliable, and there was no point in staying. He might as well just let him be. Then he busied himself with cooking bird's nest porridge and even invited the best gynecologist in Beijing. As he was not sure which one was the best, he simply invited them all over. He looked at a row of more than 10 men and women of different ages with ashen faces. Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? All of you watch carefully. The man in the white shirt was tall and straight. He was extraordinarily handsome. He lazily sat on the sofa and looked at the crowd, giving off a condescending feeling. The only thing that was out of place and funny was that he was holding a small bowl shaped like a cartoon in his hand. There were many who didn't know young Master Qi, but there were a few professors from the military headquarters who knew young Master Qi. They secretly greeted this devil 18 times in their hearts. No wonder even young Master Su had a headache when he saw him when they were young. He was quite a hoodlum. They were old bones, but they still had to suffer under his hands. Today, it was their bad luck to fall into the hands of this hoodlum. Cough, cough. The 60-year-old old Chinese medicine doctor coughed a few times unnaturally. He said to Chi Che, "Tell them T.O. go back. I'm better at giving birth and getting pregnant." Although as a man, he couldn't say it was a little embarrassing. But in the past, he was a famous golden sage. Chi Che held it in for a moment, as if he only recognized him now. "Uncle Zhao? I'm sorry, you see, it's my poor eyesight. I haven't been back to Beijing for a long time, and I didn't even recognize you. I made you go back and forth at such an old age. But since you're here, I'll have to trouble you to take a look personally." In an instant, the silk pants of the capital came out. Even he was watching with great interest. This was the first time he realized that Ache's skin was actually so thick. "Forget it. It's my honor to be able to treat the famous Dr. Helen of the Angel's Hand." Professor Zhao waved his hand. He had visited the Qi family many times during the new year, so how could he only recognize her now? However, he was actually quite happy to be able to treat Dr. Helen. Even Angel's Hand had some things she was not good at. After waving the others back, he sat down in front of he and placed his fingers on the 3 veins on he's wrist. After thinking about it for a long time, his expression became more and more serious. In the end, he looked at Chi Che with sympathy. Chi Che was extremely displeased and was furious. "Uncle Zhao, if you have something to say, just say it. I'm afraid this child can't be saved." Before Professor Zhao could finish his sentence, Chi Che suddenly interrupted him. "What did you say? Say it again." Professor Zhao was shocked. He looked at the calm girl in front of him with a complicated expression. Her body had already been damaged to this extent. It was impossible for her not to know. As the authority of the cardiothoracic surgery department, she should know better than him this child definitely couldn't be saved. Being pregnant was already a miracle. She must have hidden everything from Chi Che. Thinking of this, he frowned in disapproval. He gave him a weak smile, shook his head slightly. With his back facing Chi Che, he gave him a pleading look. "Uncle Zhao, please try your best." He spoke before Qi Chi could lose his temper. Professor Zhao shook his head helplessly. Her mood was too unstable earlier. Give her an injection immediately and take some Chinese medicine to recuperate. Hearing this, Chi Che heaved a sigh of relief. God knew how much he cared about this child. He couldn't help but laugh when he thought of the fact that he finally had a child together. In the end, Chi Che was busy until midnight before he sent Professor Zhao back. He, however, was already unable to take it and had already fallen asleep. On the luxurious and comfortable European-style bed, Chi Che silently looked at the sleeping person. His brows were tightly knitted, and his slender fingers caressed her slender wrist. His eyes revealed a trace of heartache. He was really too skinny. He's body was so weak. If he wanted to give birth to the child safely, he might not be able to take it. Moreover, he knew that he didn't tell her the news of her pregnancy at the first moment because she didn't want him to know. Did she not want to give birth to this child? Thinking of this possibility, the pain in Chi Che's eyes became even more intense. The oppressive, dull pain made the spacious room feel a little dull. This child was too important and determined his and he's future. He absolutely could not lose it. He had to protect it. Early the next morning, Chi Ching rushed into the Su family furiously. Along the way, he met Lung Feifei, who was approaching aggressively. With a sharp glare, he immediately made Lung Feifei stop in her tracks and awkwardly gave way to him. To Chi Ching, Lung Feifei was only the adopted daughter of the Su family, while her younger brother doted on her, because of the relationship between the two families and the affection they had when they were young. In Chi Ching's eyes, she was nothing. Lung Feifei stomped her feet in hatred. She had been at odds with Chi Ching since she was young. She knew that Chi Ching looked down on her, and she could not afford to offend this female demon god. She did not expect to bump into her the first time she went home. She was really unlucky. Chi-Ching did not care what Lung Fei-Fei was thinking and rushed to Su Guining's room. Su Guining, come out if you have the guts. He kicked open the door. It was the picture of a handsome man coming out of the bath. Su Guining was wearing a towel, revealing his strong bronze chest and wiping his wet hair. At first glance, he was surprised to see Chi-Ching. This little girl was getting more and more lawless. She even dared to kick his room early in the morning. Do you want to try if I have the guts? He said coldly and turned to the dressing room casually. Stop right there. Chi-Ching shouted angrily. He rushed to Su Guining and crossed his arms in front of his chest. He sneered, Are you provoking me? I'm not interested in provoking women. Then you want to arrest my people? Are you mad? Only then did Su Guining feel that something was off. Even if Chi-Ching was a gangster, he would not come to his house early in the morning to make trouble and offend his elders. Speak clearly. Chi-Ching's slender fingers fiercely poked at the firm muscles on Su Guining's chest as she said indignantly, Didn't you arrest the person I sent to invite Su Hee yesterday? What right do you have to arrest my people? It's fine if you made me lose face, but what right do you have to touch Su Hee? She's my brother's woman. Even if she can't be my Chi family's daughter-in-law, she can't be touched. She knew how serious Ah-Che was, so she was very angry. Su Guining grabbed Chi-Ching's restless hands, and his eyes were burning with anger. Do you know that you'll get angry if you do this to a man early in the morning? I, Su Guining, am not to be trifled with. Chi-Ching was shocked and hurriedly jumped a meter away. She was not afraid of Su Guining, but it did not mean that she was stupid enough not to know how dangerous this man was. I didn't catch him. I did send people yesterday, but they came back empty-handed. After saying this coldly, he walked to the cloakroom at the back to change his clothes. After a long while, he walked out with an imposing manner. Chi-Ching snorted disdainfully. You'd better pray. Su Guining was so angry that he laughed instead. He grabbed her hand and dragged her out while talking. Only your old man has the ability to do this, but he definitely won't be so ruthless. I guess he's your precious little brother. He never dared to look down on his future brother-in-law. He was definitely a ruthless character. It would be a pity if he didn't mingle with Juanjin. As soon as the two of them walked out of the door, they bumped into the Su family members who were watching the show at the door. Su Guining's cousin, Su Guiping, was smiling slyly and winked at the two of them flirtatiously. Su Guining's father and two uncles and aunts were also smiling, as if they had been looking forward to this scene for a long time. No matter how thick-skinned Chi-Ching was, he could not stand so many people watching. His face suddenly flushed red, and he secretly pinched Su Guining. Su Guining rolled his eyes at her. You asked for it. You should have thought of this, since he dared to come to his house to cause trouble. Sister-in-law, you're in such a good mood early in the morning. I'm very jealous of your love. No one dared to say that Su Guining was number one when he said that he was the second most romantic and thick-skinned person. I'm sorry for making you cheap laugh. Chi-Ching emphasized the word cheap especially. In the end, he apologized to the elders and hurriedly dragged Su Guining away in a sorry state. When Su He woke up, Chi-Che was already gone. The living room was piled with all kinds of supplements and shocking pregnant women's clothes. He was shocked. This? The old butler at the side quickly went forward and said respectfully, These are all orders from young master. Madam, what would you like to eat? We'll go and prepare it immediately. He did not have a mood to eat anymore. She was so scared that she stumbled back to her room. She thought about it and realized that she really should not lie to Ah-Che. In fact, she could not keep this child. Even if she did not go to the hospital for surgery, she would not be able to keep him. She really should not let him be happy for nothing. When she thought of this, she felt a severe pain in her heart. For a moment, it was difficult for her to breathe. Her lower abdomen felt like it was being pricked by needles. He's face was completely drained of blood. She lay on the bed, unable to move. Her hands and feet slowly became extremely cold. Not only would she not be able to give birth to this child, it would only make her die faster. After an unknown amount of time, the pain in Hee's body gradually subsided. She lifted her heavy eyelids, and it was already dark outside the window. It had already been a day. She was really lucky to be able to wake up this time. If she met the next time, she might never wake up again. She picked up the phone on the bedside table with difficulty, dialed the number, and the call was quickly connected. Lung Chinga's gentle voice sounded. "It's Hee, right? How are you?" "Mother." Su Hee could not help but cry on the phone. His tears fell on the light blue bed sheets, leaving marks on them. Lung Chinga sighed on the phone. "You went to beg the Su family. Right? Did you get rejected? I knew long ago that the Su family and I are strangers. The old man has been stubborn and loves his face all his life. He will never forgive me. If I want to be forgiven by him, I will have to die." The last word, die, was extremely heavy. There was not a trace of emotion in it. "If it were me, I would not beg them like this. It's too embarrassing." Lung Chinga said as she laughed softly with a trace of anticipation. She said, "When I left the Su family, I swore that I would never beg the Su family. If I want to beg the Su family that day, it means that I'm going to die. I will only use my snow to dye the Su family's pathred." Lung Chinga's tone was calm, as if she was talking about something that was normal but trivial. He, on the other hand, was frightened by what she heard. "Mother, don't joke with me." A strange feeling crossed her heart. She always felt that her mother's thoughts were too difficult to guess. It was as if she had been arrogant about her background when she was young, which made he feel very uncertain. Get rid of the child in your stomach. If you can't give birth, you'll only increase the pain for yourself. She was experienced. She knew how unforgettable this pain was. Back when she gave birth to in her stomach, she looked at the baby that was covered in bruises. Under the doctor's pitying gaze, no one knew how desperate she felt. Until now, she didn't dare to forget how desperate she was back then and how much she hated Fu Jianxing now. "But I can't bear to. I can't bear to do anything, right? Even if you want to exchange your life for it, you can't. Don't force it." At the main entrance, Chi-Che's Bugatti Veyron quickly drove in. As soon as it stopped, Du-Ju jumped out of the driver's seat and personally opened the car door for Chi-Che. Under the gentle light, Chi-Che stood tall and straight. The expensive custom-made black suit on his body made him look tall and slender. He didn't even wear a coat in the middle of the winter night. In his anxiety and exhaustion, it was obvious that he had rushed over in a hurry for a banquet just now. The deserted living room seemed as if it had never welcomed its mistress. Chi-Che's eyes darkened and he asked unhappily, "Where's Madam?" The old butler had a bitter expression as he followed behind Chi-Che. "Madam only came downstairs once in the morning and spent the rest of her time upstairs." "What?" Chi-Che was furious. "How did you take care of her?" The old butler was scared out of his wits. At noon, Fu Mingyao happened to bring some people to cause a ruckus. We were busy blocking people and forgot about it. It's only now that we remember. Chi-Che rubbed the space between his brows tiredly. He waved his hand to the butler to prepare dinner and went upstairs to look for He. If not for his mother dragging him back to Cydia today, he wouldn't have wasted so many things. It was impossible for Fu Mingyao not to solve it. He pushed open the door. The room was dark, but Chi-Che's eyesight was very good. He accurately found the person lying on the bed and turned on a soft wall lamp, reflecting He's pale face. Chi-Che felt a strange, dull pain in his heart. It was so intense that he closed his eyes before he recovered. He didn't know whether it was right or wrong for him to trap her like this. Could it be that his goal was just to see He's pale and haggard day by day? How much did she hate him to such an extent? However, he would never let go. He had to go to the hospital for a good checkup tomorrow. Ache. He's eyes were misty. When she smelled the familiar aura, she subconsciously smiled at him indifferently. "Ache, let me go." "Okay. We don't have a future." Chi-Che's handsome face darkened. He did not expect He to open his heart to talk to him with such heartless words. "Are you angry with me?" "Don't worry, I won't marry Meng Yao." He had personally returned to City to talk to Fu Jianxing that day. The wedding had to be canceled. As for the conditions, he was free to mention them. He had given him 3 days to consider. Even if he did not agree 3 days later, he would force him to agree. Chi-Che carried her as if nothing had happened. There was not a hint of emotion in his eyes. He walked out of the room and brushed past Du-Ju at the staircase. Du-Ju was shocked. Why did the president look like he was in deep pain? Chi placed He on the dining table and personally scooped a bowl of porridge for her. He forced himself to eat half a bowl before raising his head to ask him, "What about Meng Yao?" To be honest, He and Meng Yao had known each other since they were young. The grudges of the previous generation had made them enemies since they were young. Although they did not speak ill of each other, they tried their best to avoid meeting each other. Studying together at a university was actually an accident. This was because it was an even bigger accident for the same man to reach this stage. Sometimes, fate was like this. You just did not want it to happen. The previous generation, Mother, Wen Ling, Fu Juanxing, this generation, Su Hehe, Fu Mingyao, and Chi Che. Wen Ling could not let go and ended up in the mental hospital. Her mother could not let go of the fact that she had been imprisoned for 20 years without her own flesh and blood. Fu Juanxing could not let go. The woman he loved was right in front of him, but she was far away, hating him for the rest of her life. He shivered when she thought of the ending of her previous generation. The spoon in her hand suddenly fell on the dining table on the marble table. A crisp sound rang out, and a muffled echo echoed in the huge villa. Chi-Che's eyes were foggy as he stared at He without blinking. A servant immediately handed her a silver spoon, but he felt that the spoon was as heavy as 1,000 gold coins. He couldn't hold it no matter how hard he held it, and his pale and slender hands couldn't help but tremble. He stared at Chi-Che with her eyes full of reluctance. He almost couldn't bear to move away and just stared at him deeply. She loved him to the bone. She loved him too deeply, but she also hurt him too deeply. This time, she almost never saw Che smile. In fact, it was all because she was too persistent and she couldn't let go just like her mother. No, she absolutely couldn't walk the same path as her mother. Her ending had long been decided, but Che's ending could never be the same as Fu Juanxing's. Knock, knock. The crisp sound of high heels hitting the marble floor could be heard. Lung Feifei's long hair fell over her shoulders. Her cool sunglasses covered half of her delicate face, and her fiery red lips were full of flirtatious charm. She walked over with swaying steps and only took off her sunglasses when she was in front of the two of them. She gave Chi-Che a slight glance, charming and moving. "Brother, Che doesn't welcome me." After saying that, she sat down next to Chi-Che without any explanation. Her movements were intimate and familiar. Since she couldn't hold the spoon, he might as well put it down. She raised her head to look at the woman in front of her with a calm expression and a hint of sizing her up. The superstar aura of the Asian diva was indeed not to be ignored. It was very stylish. No wonder she could make the first daughter, Fu Mingyao, as her opponent. Hao Yinfei's words were still very reliable. It was also thanks to her liking to gossip about these things. Lung Feifei was also sizing her up. She wasn't as reserved as she was. She looked down at her directly and provocatively. The disdain in her eyes became less and less, but the coldness in her eyes became more and more intense. Was this the internationally renowned angel's hand? She was so beautiful that she didn't look like a doctor. She indeed had the ability to confuse people's hearts. "Hello, I'm Lung Feifei, and I'm also Brother Che's fiancée. Please don't misunderstand. Fu Mingyao is Brother Che's fiancée that he chose himself, and I'm the fiancée that the Qi family's elders personally chose for Brother Che." Lung Feifei raised her chin arrogantly. The sneer on her lips became increasingly obvious. "Do you know? A well-matched family is very important. Fu Mingyao's identity as the first daughter of the family is already difficult for the family to accept. Your identity as an illegitimate daughter will never be accepted. I advise you to give up on this idea." He bit her lips tightly. Her originally pale green lips were bitten until they turned bright red. "Shut up." Chi-Che suddenly put down the chopsticks in his hand. His cold and dark eyes stared at Lung Feifei, causing her to feel goosebumps. "Brother Che, you've never been so fierce to me before." Chi-Che's expression was too terrifying, as if he wanted to devour her at any moment. Chi-Che collected his thoughts slightly and said in a deep voice, "The family should have warned you before you came, right?" Lung Feifei recalled the stern warnings from her uncle, aunt, and grandfather before she left, and her heart became even more flustered. They had indeed told her not to act rashly. But was she acting rashly? She was just unwilling to give up and get back some face. Moreover, what she said wasn't the truth. Brother Che had always doted on her. Even in the past, he thought that Fu Mingyao had never been so fierce to her. This time, he was actually so fierce to her. Su He really had good methods. Get out. You're not welcome here. Che pointed at the door with one hand and said impatiently, You've disappointed me too much. Don't make me say it again. The Asian diva that he had raised with one hand was actually so uncouth. No wonder he had chosen Fu Mingyao back then. At least until now, she had not lost her status and ran over to make a big fuss. Lung Fei staggered to her feet and widened her eyes in disbelief. Her right hand trembled as she pointed at Su He. Do you dislike me because of her? Che nodded silently. He allowed anyone to violate his bottom line, and his only bottom line was he. Du Ju also sighed in the living room. Lung Fei was too brainless. Relying on the CEO's favor and the Su family's backing, she became more and more lawless and unbridled. She clearly knew that the CEO didn't like this, yet she still dared to provoke him. All right, I'll go. Lung Fei suffered a huge blow and left in a daze. Before she left, she didn't forget to glare fiercely at He. The hatred in her eyes made He's heart palpitate, and he immediately lost his appetite. I'm full. He stood up and went upstairs. In the restaurant, Du Ju asked hesitantly, President, do you want to go out and take a look? Call Su Guining and bring her back. Du Ju was stunned. The CEO was really angry. Lung Fei was most afraid of Su Guining. He actually wanted Su Guining to come pick her up. Wasn't he trying to take Lung Fei's life? After leaving those words coldly, Che quickly followed he and hugged her. As soon as he pushed open the room, the sound of running water could be heard from the bathroom. Only then did Che relax and turn around to go to the study. Coincidentally, Ching's call came in. Che, you little brat. How dare you capture my people? After finding out the truth, Ching was furious. At this time, he rushed to Villa number 3 but was rejected. It was infuriating. She pushed aside the curtains in the study and indeed saw Ching kicking the car outside the villa to vent her anger. Go back and tell Mom that all I want is Su He. If she accepts me, I'll bring him back tomorrow for her to see. There's no need to secretly send people. You? Ching raised her neck to look at the two cuddling movements and felt really uncomfortable. She could only soften her tone and say, Can't you let me in? I'm your sister. If I don't help you, who will? Who would believe it? Then, she simply hung up the phone. Ching was so angry that she almost vomited blood. This brat was getting more and more ruthless. He actually dared to treat her like this. Didn't she just watch from the sidelines and occasionally fan the flames? Did he have to reject her as a guest? Although Che hung up the phone, he still got someone to open the door. The siblings had been causing a ruckus since they were young and had long gotten used to it. You're quite ruthless. You ruthlessly set my Su Guining up. Walking into the study, Ching crossed her arms in front of her desk and looked at Che, who was focused on his work with interest. You asked for it. Ching sighed. Don't look at how arrogant she was, but there was nothing she could do about Che. After looking around, Ching said suspiciously, Where's Su He? Tell her to come see me. Che finally raised his head from the computer and said firmly, No one can force her. Yo, she's not even married yet, and she's already protecting her. If Mom finds out, she'll be heartbroken. Can you not gloat? No. One day, it'll be your turn to suffer. Ching was amused by Che's words. He pulled a chair and sat beside Che. It's not that you don't know about our circle. Love is a cheap product, and it's all fake. Identity, power, and status are the root. What about you and Su Guining? Unable to stand Ching's incessant chatter, Che simply closed the computer and looked at her sharply. Ching choked and said embarrassedly, We're just taking what we need and trying to have fun. As expected, sometimes he would feel bad letting his sister shoulder the responsibility that he should have borne since he was young. Looking at his younger brother's appearance, Ching hurriedly explained, don't think too much. I'm having fun. Is that so? Chi-Che's final voice was very low, so low that it was almost inaudible. In the past, when had he not been like that? It was just that when he met he, the things that would never change suddenly changed. Compared to her, even if he left the family, what could he do? Chi-Che's thoughtful expression made Chi-Ching feel extremely uneasy in his heart. Ache was too independent. Sometimes, even she couldn't figure it out. Ache, you must agree. You absolutely can't be like Su Guinning's aunt. Su Chingo was a taboo in this circle. Everyone worshipped her, but since young, they had been warned not to be like her. She wouldn't have a good ending. Chi-Che's lips curled into a handsome smile. He patted Chi-Ching's hand in a comforting manner. I won't. You underestimate me too much. That's good. Her real purpose of coming tonight was to persuade Che not to make things worse with her family. Frankly speaking, it was not worth it for a woman. However, whether it was worth it or not was not up to her. Perhaps in Che's heart, Suhi was worth everything. The next day, Chi-Che personally dragged He to the hospital. His attitude was firm, and he did not allow He to back down. Che, can I not go to the hospital? Suhi hugged the blanket and refused to get off the bed. The tall man shook his head as he straightened his suit. He said in a good-natured manner, I won't be at ease if I don't go for a checkup. After Chi-Ching left last night, he sat alone in the study until dawn. If he did not go for a checkup, he was afraid that he would not be able to sleep. Ache, he acted coquettishly. His coquettish voice could almost make one's bones go soft. The man who was buttoning his shirt had his deep eyes turn darker. His top body was like an elegant jaguar. He pressed He against his body, and his hot breath brushed against her delicate skin. He could not help but tremble. When their eyes met, he forgot to struggle. He was intoxicated by his deep sea-like eyes until he was dead. I don't mind going a little later. I'll let those old men wait a little longer. His hoarse voice contained a charming smile. Then, he kissed her without any explanation. His hot and overbearing kiss greedily absorbed her sweetness and beauty. Chi-Che's slender fingers deftly dug into her underwear. Ache. The faint sound made him suck even more intensely. His dark eyes stared deeply at the beautiful and charming woman in front of him. In the end, he suddenly pulled his hand out and held He tightly in his arms. He can't do it now. It's too dangerous. God knows how inhumane it would be for him to endure it. I'm going to take a shower first. Sui finally burst into laughter as he watched Chi-Che rush into the bathroom in a sorry state. It was rare to see Ache in such a sorry state. It was so interesting to see him endure it so patiently. See how I'll deal with you in the future. You can pray that you won't be able to leave your room for 3 days. Chi-Che's fierce warning came from the splashing sound of the water. He laughed even more brazenly. The hospital Chi-Che chose was the military district's general hospital. Before he came, he had already informed the hospital's director. He was accompanied by people throughout the entire journey. The treatment was definitely not inferior to the first hospital in City A. Early in the morning, a few core leaders of the hospital personally led people to wait at the main entrance until an extended Bentley slowly stopped in front of everyone. When the graceful and luxurious Zhou Huaishio walked out of it, the hospital director with the Mediterranean hairstyle was so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground. Madam Chi. They never expected Madam Chi to come personally. Didn't they say that young Master Chi would bring his wife for a prenatal checkup? Even Madam Chi came? A trace of surprise flashed across Zhou Huaishio's eyes. She had decided to bring Meng Yao for a prenatal checkup at the last minute. She didn't inform them beforehand, but these old fellows were actually able to welcome her at the entrance. Madam Chi, it is truly an honor for you to come personally. All the examinations have already been arranged. The director's reaction was extremely quick. He nodded and bowed to Fu Mengyao, who had come down from the other side. I believe this must be Madam Chi, the famous angel's hand. It is truly an honor for our hospital to have you here. If you have any comments or suggestions, please do not hesitate to enlighten us. Fu Mengyao, who had just steadied herself, trembled in anger when she heard these words. She almost fell, and Butler Bai, who was following behind her, was so frightened that he hurriedly held her up. Zhou Horatio was also embarrassed. Cough, cough. Director Zhou, this is indeed my future daughter-in-law, but what kind of angel's hand is this? To think that he was her distant relative. He actually had such poor eyesight. Director Zhou was shocked. He wiped the cold sweat on his head and said in puzzlement, "Last night, I received a call from young Master Qi. He said that he would bring his wife here for a prenatal checkup and also do a full checkup. The information he sent over said that." Before he could finish his sentence, Fu Mingyao interrupted him. "Enough." The hand holding the Chanel handbag trembled violently. Yes, yes, yes. I made a mistake. Please come in, please come in." It was almost noon. Chi-Che dragged the reluctant Su He and came late. Looking at the busy people, Du Ju couldn't help but tease. Director Zhou is not good at handling things. Even young Master Chi's words were not bought. Chi-Che frowned and took the elevator to the Gynecology and Obstetrics Department's registration office on the 15th floor. He took the case file from a window and filled in the information in a lively manner. The young nurse who had her head lowered was stunned when she took the case file. Name, Chi-Che. Gender, male. Men also came to the Gynecology and Obstetrics Department these days. The young nurse raised her head curiously. When she saw the handsome man in front of her, her entire face was red until her neck. Then she looked at the case file in her hands and looked back and forth a few times reluctantly. In the end, she shook her head regretfully. What was the use of being handsome? They all came to see the Gynecology and Obstetrics Department. It was such a pity. Why were all the top-notch handsome men abnormal these days? Why were all the crooked men over-secreting male hormones? He stood up behind Chi-Che and covered his mouth as he snickered. "Ah-Che, you're being despised." Duju hurriedly turned around and took 3 steps back to maintain a safe distance from the two of them. It was best to pretend that he did not know them. Chi-Che turned around and planted a punitive kiss on her lips. He said in a low voice, "You're enough for me." He's cheeks were flushed with embarrassment. He secretly kicked him fiercely. "You're not serious." Su He quickly broke free from his grip and took out a new medical record from the nurse's hand. "One look, and I can tell that you're a young master who has enjoyed special privileges since young. You don't understand the procedure of seeing a doctor. Let me do it." Chi-Che's hands were in his belt. Even if he had made a small mistake just now, his expression was still calm. At this moment, when he heard He's words, his straight brows raised in displeasure. He took the medical record from He's hand and helped her to sit down on the chair. Then, he personally went to pay and queue up. "You're the first person who can make our president personally pay and queue up." Du Ju gave He a thumbs up in admiration. In the past, he had always thought that the word Q would never appear on the president. He shrugged. But Che has money on him. What would happen if he took out a checkbook when he paid? Damn it, Du Ju suddenly realized. If the president lost face on the spot, he would definitely be implicated. "Wait a little longer. We'll come over right away." "Okay." He nodded obediently. Only when Doohie's figure disappeared at the stairway did she slowly get up and take out the other medical case that she had been hiding in her hand. The smile on her face that had been forcing a smile gradually froze on her face. The eye-catching words abortion on the medical record stung her eyes, making her not dare to look straight at it. Her footsteps towards the elevator entrance were as heavy as a daughter's, but she did not know that she could actually walk faster and faster. When she passed by the paid queue window and saw Chi-Che standing out like a crane among chickens in the crowd from afar, tears fell uncontrollably from her eyes. The more they fell, the fiercer they became. She could not finish wiping them off no matter how hard she tried. The man who was as luxurious as the stars in the sky was willing to fall into the mortal world for her. He squeezed into the crowd with a focused expression and did not show a trace of impatience. What she could return was that from now on, she would let him be free and pursue true happiness from now on. Finally, she took a deep look at the handsome and eye-catching man. Su He resolutely turned around and took the elevator, pressing the button on the 17th floor. "Congratulations, the baby is very healthy." On the 17th floor, The director of the gynecology and obstetrics department smiled and handed the report of Fu Mengyao's examination to Zhou Huaxiu. In the future, come for regular examinations. As long as you maintain a happy mood, it will be fine. Thank you. Zhou Huaxiu received the report with a smile and did not forget to tell Fu Mengyao, who was beside her, in the future, remember not to wear high heels anymore. It's too unsafe. Okay. Fu Mengyao nodded obediently, trying her best to win Zhou Huaxiu's favor. Director Zhou, in the future, don't go to all the trouble of emptying the 17th floor. Zhou Huaxiu looked at the large 17th floor, which had all the medical staff, but it was deserted with only a few of them. She shook her head disapprovingly. Director Zhou nervously rubbed his hands and hurriedly explained, "Actually, there's another surgery being carried out here today. My doctoral tutor, President Chung of University A's medical school, personally made an appointment to lead the medical team to carry out a very crucial surgery." Fu Mengyao stopped in her tracks and stared at President Zhou with a sharp gaze. Due to her excessive nervousness, even her voice could not help but become a little shrill coincidentally. I also graduated from University A. Although I'm a business school, I've always admired President Chung of the medical school. I'm very curious as to why President Chung, who specializes in cardiothoracic surgery, would come to the gynecology and obstetrics department. Her intuition told her that there was something that she had overlooked, and the truth would soon surface. This made her, who had been troubled all this time, gradually become excited. I heard that he has a patient who is pregnant. It's too dangerous for him to choose to abort the child. What's his name? I think his surname is Su. President Chung thinks highly of him. His surname was Su. Could it be that the person that President Chung thought highly of was Su Hehe? When she thought of this possibility, Fu Mingyao's hands trembled slightly. She pretended to be concerned and said, "Miss Su happens to be my classmate. Can I go take a look?" "Of course. This way, please." President Zhou personally made a right-turn gesture and led a group of people to the best operating theater on the 17th floor. At the end of the corridor of the operating theater was the elevator. When the group of people arrived, the door of the operating theater opened, and the elevator door was also opened. Fu Mengyao stood in the middle. The moment the automatic door opened, she bumped into Su Hehe, who was sitting in the ambulance. Their eyes met, and both of them were stunned at the same time. Su Hehe clutched the corner of his shirt tightly. He looked at Fu Mengyao, who was surrounded by the crowd, in a daze. When his gaze fell on her obviously loose maternity clothes, a layer of fog appeared in his bright eyes, and the corner of his mouth curled into a sarcastic arc. "Long time no see." Fu Mengyao looked down at him from above, just like the #1 daughter of university, unattainable. "It's been a long time." He did not expect to see such a scene the moment they met. They were both pregnant. One tried all sorts of ways to make the child healthy and smart, while the other had no choice but to personally abort his own child. This was the greatest irony in the world. "You're Su Hehe?" Zhou Huaxiu immediately grasped the main point and raised her voice to ask, "You're pregnant? Whose child is it?" "The child is gone." "Is there any meaning in answering whose child it is?" Zhou Huaxiu was stunned. She looked at the calm Su Hehe in front of her in shock. Fu Mingyao's voice suddenly became much louder, as if she was afraid that others could not hear her. "Su Hehe, you're too cruel. You actually aborted Che's child with your own hands. Are you even human?" Su Hehe looked at her disdainfully and said unwillingly, "So what if I'm cruel? If I'm cruel, would I still be as cruel as you and your father?" If it wasn't for Fu Jianxing, she and her mother would never have fallen to such a state. "Su Hehe, don't be so shameless. You stole my fiancée and are willing to be a mistress." Mother and daughter were both mistresses. They deserved it. Su Hehe, who was sitting in the ambulance, frowned slightly when he heard the word mistress. The suppressed pain in his eyes made it impossible for everyone present to ignore the sadness on her body. She was most afraid of being called a mistress by others. After circling around for so many years, she was still unable to escape. Today, Fu Mengyao pointed at her nose and scolded her as a mistress. She actually had nothing to say. Zhou Huaxiao was so angry that her entire body trembled and her vision turned black. She took a few steps forward and heavily slapped Su Hehe's face. The resounding applause stunned everyone, and they didn't dare to speak. No one would have thought that the elegant Madame Qi would actually personally slap a junior. Fu Mingyao was also stunned. The resentment that had been stuck in her heart for a long time vanished into thin air at this moment. Madame Qi hated Su Hehe, so she was relieved. With Madame Qi's methods, Su Hehe didn't even know how he died. Su Hehe, you don't know how to appreciate favors. Even if my Qi family doesn't allow you to enter, you don't have the right to remove the Qi family's bloodline. Zhou Huaxiao pointed angrily at Su Hehe. I don't care what grudges you have with Meng Yao. Just because you removed Che's child, the Qi family won't tolerate you. Get lost, and don't let me see you in Beijing in the future. Today, Su Hehe's actions were simply slapping Zhou Huaxiao's face, trampling on the Qi family's face. No one could treat the future master of the Qi family like this. So how could she dare? How many women had queued up to form a relationship with the Qi family? But she actually dared to personally abort Che's child. She simply didn't put the Qi family in her eyes. Su Hehe's originally chaotic thoughts became clear and calm because of Zhou Huaxiao's slap. He calmly pushed away President Cheng's concerned action and reached out to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. The smile in his eyes became even more bone-chilling. The Qi family's power is indeed monstrous. This Beijing actually can accommodate a puny Su Hehe. President Cheng and President Zhou, who were unwilling to admit defeat, looked at each other with ridicule in their tone. They could see deep shock in each other's eyes. No one in Beijing dared to speak to Zhou Huaxiao like that. Su Hehe was too bold. Zhou Huaxiao was so angry that she laughed. She waved her hand to the people behind her and ordered, since she needs to be disciplined since young, teach her how to behave and how to speak properly. Two burly men, who were 1.8 meters tall, surrounded Su Hehe with a suffocating pressure. Enough! A bone-chilling voice suddenly sounded, successfully preventing the burly men from approaching. Get out of here! The burly man only listened to the order and didn't dare to hesitate at all. He immediately retreated to the side. Che's tall and straight figure appeared in the middle of the corridor. Dressed in a black suit, he was like Satan from hell at this moment, cold and dangerous. His entire body emitted a pain that was close to despair. Zhou Huaxiao's heart ached as she looked at Che. No one knew her son's pain better than his mother. At the same time, she secretly felt that her luck was too bad. Originally, she wanted to keep this matter going, but she didn't expect Che to actually bump into her. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but look at Fu Mingyao suspiciously. When she quarreled with Su Hehe just now, her deliberately high voice was probably meant for Che to hear. What a good schemer! A trace of displeasure rose in Zhou Huaxiao's heart. She actually discovered that Che had come a long time ago and deliberately didn't enlighten him. Instead, she made the matter even bigger. If Che was fine, that was for the best. If he suffered a blow, she wouldn't let go of a single one. Che's footsteps were heavy as he walked in front of Su Hehe. Every step he took was as if he was stepping on people's hearts, making it difficult for them to breathe. Why are you doing this? Why? He grabbed Su Hehe's collar and lifted her up, facing him directly. Su Hehe subconsciously covered his lower abdomen with his hands. When he realized that his actions weren't appropriate, he quickly put his hands down and pressed them against Che's chest, using this as an excuse to struggle away from the two of them. Che's eyes were filled with hysterical madness. He increased the strength of his hands, making it difficult for Su Hehe to breathe. His cheeks flushed red, and the bright red palm print on his face had a hint of purple. Let go of me, cough cough. President Cheng was also flustered. He hurriedly went forward to pull Che's hand to stop him. Che, let go. You make it impossible for him to breathe like this. Che suddenly let go of his grip on Su Hehe. He turned his head to look at President Cheng in danger and asked coldly, President Cheng, are you part of this as well? Are you absolutely certain that Chi-Che, am a vegetarian? Chi-Che, it's not like that. You've misunderstood. President Chang's earnest explanation was suddenly interrupted by Su He. Stop explaining. The reality is right in front of us, and there's nothing to explain. I don't want this child, and I don't want to have a child with the surname Chi. President Chung, please push me back to the ward. I'm tired. Su He looked into the unknown distance with a wooden expression. He stubbornly refused to look at Chi-Che beside him. The exhaustion in his voice was heartbreaking. President Chung sighed heavily. What sin did I do in my previous life to actually encounter such a thing? After saying that, he resigned himself to fate and pushed the bed through the crowd to the ward. Zhou Huaxiu couldn't help but mutter to herself, "What kind of sin did I, Zhou Huaxiu, do to meet such a heartless woman?" Chi-Che staggered and almost lost his balance. Fortunately, Du Ju followed behind him and held him up in time. Ever since the CEO of the 15th floor paid money and couldn't find Su He had been anxiously looking for him everywhere. Later, through GPS, he finally confirmed that he was on the 17th floor. He didn't expect to see such a scene when he stepped out of the elevator door. In just a short hour, the contrast in the situation was too great. What exactly did Su He do in his heart? He was actually so ruthless. Those who did not know must have thought that Su He and the president had a reconcilable hatred. Perhaps he should go back and investigate properly. In the ward, Su He hugged his knees with both hands and buried his head in pain. An indistinct voice came from inside. "President Chung, I want you to swear that you will never say a word." Su He, don't go too far. President Chung was also angry. If I really couldn't bear to watch that day, I would definitely say it. Count it as I'm begging you, okay? The originally soft and charming voice turned nasal. President Chung patted her shoulder in heartache. He did not need to look to know that he must be crying like a baby buried in her knees. Even though he had experienced the world, he could still feel the piercing pain. He clearly only had a few days left in his life. But even his last days were many times more difficult than other people's lives. "Uncle Chung, you're just like my father. I can only beg you." Even if A.H.C. Chi was sad, it was only temporary. When his child with Fu Mengyao was born, he would definitely lead a very happy life as a father. President Chung closed his eyes helplessly. The wrinkles on his old face seemed to have been added many times. "All right, I won't say it, but I hope you won't be too sad. It will pass. I hope you can live happily in your last days." "Okay, let's go back to Sitia tomorrow. Beijing really isn't suitable for me." "Okay." At dusk, Su He hung up the last drip. When he came out of the hospital, snowflakes were flying everywhere. The entire city was covered in a layer of silver. The bone-piercing cold wind blew on his body. Even the thick down jacket could not block the cold from his heart. Su He stood alone at the entrance of the hospital in a daze. He tried his best to look up at the sky. The cold snow fell on his face. Even his thick eyelashes, which were as thick as a fan, were covered with a layer of snow-white frost. Just now, before she parted with President Chung, she had said that she would go back to get her clothes. However, there were no clothes that belonged to her in Ache's villa. She wanted to go back just to find an excuse. She wanted to take one last look at Ache. Just one look was enough. Wah! The fiery red Lamborghini sports car made a beautiful drift in the snow and stopped in front of Su He. Tang Yi, with a messy hair, poked out from the car window. "Heartless woman, quickly get in the car." Su He was stunned. Looking at Tang Yi's appearance, he didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He just stood there foolishly without moving. "Girl, why are you silly? Quickly get in the car." Tang Yi simply jumped out of the car. Suddenly, he hugged Su He and stuffed him into the car. "Are you frozen? How can you stand in the snow like a fool when you're not well?" Tang Yi held Su He's hands in his palms and used his body temperature to warm her hands. "Why are you here?" she asked foolishly after a long time. "Who else would come if I didn't come at this time?" Tang Yi rolled his eyes at her. "Yeah, who else would come besides you? Who else would come in this world?" Che was pushed away by her own hands. She had nothing left. Tang Yi sighed. The silly girl was already so sad. yet she still pretended to be strong. He held Suhi's hand carefully in front of him and said seriously, "Silly girl, even if the whole world abandons you, I won't leave you." He broke into a smile, sniffed, and said, I'm not used to you suddenly being so serious." This young master has always been very serious. Tang Yi quickly boasted proudly. If he had a tail, it would definitely go up to the sky at this moment. Fei Fei has always said that young Master Tang will be serious and that the sow will climb up the tree. He teased. Tang Yi finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At least he would still be able to force a smile and nothing would happen to him. God knows how much he was frightened when the news reached him through Su winning. No one had expected things to develop to this stage. Perhaps Ache and he really did not have fate. In Villa number 3, Tang Yi waited with Su He for an entire night. No matter how much Tang Yi tried to persuade him, he refused to sleep in the living room. Ao's eyes were bloodshot, and his face was red and swollen, but he refused to apply medicine. Finally, when it was almost dawn, the villa's door was open from the outside. He immediately jumped down from the sofa barefooted and rushed to the door, bumping into Fu Mingyao when he saw that there was only Du Ju behind Fu Mingyao. His bright eyes instantly dimmed. "How can you still have the face to stay here?" Fu Mingyao screamed exaggeratedly. Du Ju frowned unhappily and turned to Su He. "The CEO drank too much at the banquet last night and is now in the hospital. We'll go over after we get our things. Do you want to come with us?" In fact, last night, the CEO had been drinking with a group of his childhood friends in a bar. The group of people were all drunk until they were unconscious. In the end, they drank until their stomachs bled and they were hospitalized. Even when they were unconscious, they kept dragging people to call Su He one voice after another. Even he couldn't bear to hear it. If it weren't for Madame Chi, who had rushed over later, stopping him, he would have come to call Su He. Is she even worthy? Fu Mingyao sneered and mocked. "Shameless be asterisk Tisich. You'd better get lost and never appear in front of Che again." "Fu Mingyao, you'd better watch your mouth." Su He glared at Fu Mingyao angrily. "I don't want to take advantage of your quick tongue, but please remember that you're the first daughter of City A. When did the most noble campus belle of University become so lowly that people looked down on her?" Yes, the current Fu Mingyao was simply incomparable to the previous Fu Mingyao. In the past, Fu Mingyao had always put on airs and played the role of the first daughter of her. She was noble and elegant. The current Fu Mingyao was so unfamiliar that people were afraid of her. Her words and actions were completely different from the past. You forced her. If it wasn't for Su He taking over Che, she wouldn't have ended up like this if she had gone crazy that day. It was also because of Su He. Su He shook his head in disappointment and said apologetically to Du Ju, "I'm sure Ache won't welcome me by his side. I'm going back to City too. Goodbye." Su He, Du Ju was about to step forward to stop him, but he was suddenly stopped by Tang Yi. At this point, do they still have a chance? Ache will probably be so disgusted after she wakes up that she won't even want to see her, right? Even if you bring her back now, you'll only let everyone humiliate her. Du Ju was stunned. His mind was filled with terror. The only thing he heard was the word humiliate. "Let's go. It's good that we're leaving. Don't ever appear in front of the president again," Du Ju said in his heart as he watched Su He and Tang Yi leave. The CEO did love Su He, but when she personally aborted the CEO's child, her love would turn into hatred. When Su He dragged his exhausted body back to his rented room in City A, he slept for 3 days and 3 nights. Other than the pain in his heart, he was in a daze and took medicine. He didn't notice anything that happened outside. It was only when the door was kicked open that she woke up. "Thank you. Keep the change." At the door, Hao Lianfei took out a few hundred-yuan bills from her wallet and handed them to the locksmith. "Remember to close the door when you go out. Take care." The locksmith gave Hao Lianfei a strange look before turning around and leaving. "Fei Fei." Sui sat up in a daze and looked at her in surprise. Hao Lianfei suddenly looked like she had seen a ghost and pointed at her with trembling fingers. "Are you crazy? Even if Chi Che abandoned you, you can't torture yourself like this, right? Look at you now. You're neither human nor ghost. Even I look down on you if you continue to be tormented and decadent. So he picked up the small mirror on the bedside table with trembling hands. A despairing and self-deprecating smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. At that time, Alex was like this before she died. Her color was gray, and she looked like a ball of death. At that time, they were together day and night. She would never forget it. You're already like this, yet you can still smile? Hao Yinfei crossed her arms in front of her chest. She was so angry that she was amused. She lay on the bed and looked at Su He's appearance. The more she looked at him, the more her heart ached. In the end, tears involuntarily fell down. The boiling temperature made Su He's heart, which had long been cold and numb, tremble slightly. His eyes, which were filled with deathly aura, were stained with a layer of moist fog, and a glimmer of brilliance lit up once again. You said that you were fine before you went to Beijing. Why did you come back to be tormented by yourself like this? Why did you spoil yourself like this? What effect does this have on Chi-Che? He's still living well, and he's preparing to have a double celebration with Fu Mingyao. The reason why Hao Yinfei used her ultimate method to get people to break down the door was also because she was forced to. Just as the entire company was divided into two factions to bet on who would become the female owner of the Qi Group, all of a sudden, all the news media reported that Fu Mingyao was pregnant. She was about to get married to Chi-Che with a child, but this fool Su He had been cooped up at home and didn't come out. How could she not be anxious? It's good to get married too, Su He muttered. He once again crawled into the bed and covered himself tightly with the blanket. Hao Yinfei was so angry that she almost fainted. She glared at the person under the blanket and said hatefully, "Why did you give up? I don't have much hope anymore. I plan to be alone for the rest of my life. Are you going to do the same? I don't believe that you will lose to Fu Mingyao. Why do you want to give up?" A muffled voice came from under the blanket. "If love is a war, I am destined to be the biggest loser." Hao Yinfei gradually calmed down. The doubts in her heart were like a sprouting plant that broke out of the ground and instantly grew into a towering tree. He had been very abnormal ever since she came back. She had always known that she was not used to the 5-year estrangement just because they had been separated for a long time. Now it seemed that he must be hiding something from her. Cough, cough. A heavy cough came from under the blanket. Each cough sounded as if he was coughing with his own life. What's wrong? Were you feeling unwell? Hao Yinfei turned pale with fright. She did not care whether she would make He unhappy or not. She stretched out her hand and pulled the blanket away with all her might. The white and soft bedsheet was stained with a dazzling bright red. He was lying on the bed in pain, his hands tightly gripping his mouth. The heavy coughing and panting could not be covered by his hands. Bright red blood was seeping out from between his fingers, dripping onto the pillow and bedsheet everywhere. Hao Yinfei was so shocked that her eyes were about to split open. Her eyes were bright red. She held Su He's shoulder in grief and indignation and said in a deep voice, "Is this the reason why you left Chi-Che back then? Is this the reason why you were destined to lose from the start?" Su He was powerless to break free, and he was even more powerless to defend himself. She could clearly feel that something was slowly disappearing from her body. In front of her was Alex's bright and warm smile. She had been waiting for her for a long time. Right, Alex? Don't be anxious. She would go very soon. It was so fast that even she could not imagine it and was caught unprepared. If she didn't go to Beijing, if these things didn't happen, she might still be able to delay it for another 2 months, right? Her heart disease was in the terminal stage, and now it actually caused complications. Her liver was severely damaged. No one could save her now. You'll be fine. You'll definitely be fine. I'll take you to the hospital, find President Chung, and find Chi-Che. He definitely has a way to save you. Hao Yinfei hugged her in a panic. However, she was held by Su He. Her slender and thin hands were surprisingly strong. The bright red blood on her hands left a glaring, bloody handprint on Hao Yinfei's white sleeve. Hao Yinfei burst into tears, and her heart was filled with endless regret and reproach. Her fair arms, which were supposed to be full of youth and vitality, had become so thin and weak as her only friend. She had only realized it now. "Don't go. There's no medicine. A hoarse voice said faintly, "Take out the medicine from the drawer and give it to me." Hao Yinfei quickly went to the bedside table to get the medicine, as if she had been electrocuted. As soon as the drawer was opened, it was full of all kinds of capsule medicine, English, Chinese, German, and even Japanese. Some of them had already been eaten, and some were half-eaten, some hadn't been opened yet. Hao Yinfei closed her eyes in pain. What kind of medicine? Ahem. There are 13 boxes in a row on the right. Each box has 2 pills. The one on the left has 3 boxes. Each box has 3 pills. The voice paused. He didn't open her eyes until the coughing stopped. Her eyes fell on the empty white bottle in the middle of the drawer. After a long while, she said in a low voice, "The one in the middle, 1 pill." This bottle of medicine was given by her teacher before she came back. It was very effective in relieving pain. Once it was taken, not only could it relieve pain, but it could also make people more energetic. As long as she wanted to hide it, she wouldn't be able to see anything unusual. However, once consumed, she would definitely not live for more than a month. Hao Lianfei held a palm full of medicine in one hand and covered her mouth with the other to prevent herself from crying out loud. She held the medicine in front of he with trembling hands. Her jade-white, slender hands trembled as if she could no longer hold these small pills. So he took a tissue and slowly wiped off the blood from his hands and the corners of his mouth. Then he took the medicine from Hao Lianfei's hands and lifted his chin. Dozens of pills were swallowed effortlessly by her. It was as simple as a child eating candy. He was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She looked weak, but she was actually so strong that it made one's heart ache. A bitter smile appeared on He's lips. "I'm used to eating since I was young. It doesn't matter anymore." Ever since she was young, she had eaten more medicine than rice, but it was definitely more than salt. Hao Lianfei couldn't hold it in anymore. The two of them hugged each other tightly and cried loudly. As they cried, they said, How can you be so stupid? So stupid?" In the end, she didn't hear a single word Hao Lianfei said, and Juanhao's shocked and incredulous eyes appeared in front of her in complete darkness. The anger in his eyes almost drowned her. Uncle must have found out too. It was good that she knew. Anyway, she didn't plan to hide it from him anymore. She still hoped that Uncle would take care of her mother in the future. When she woke up again, she had already changed to another room. He looked up and sized up the room. It happened to be the villa she stayed in the night. She ran out of Zifeng Building's Sky Villa and Juanhao's private residence. She turned her head to look out the window. It was snowing all over the sky, and countless snowflakes were falling on the windowsill. They were crystal clear and very beautiful. The door to the room was pushed open at some point in time, and Juanhao and Hao Lianfei walked in with gloomy expressions, followed by the silent President Cheng. After taking a glance at Su He, President Cheng shook his head in pain and turned to leave. In the end, he did not have the courage to watch Su He die. He was afraid that he would not be able to answer when Cheng followed behind him every day and asked, "Where did Sister Angel go?" Hao Lianfei could not help but cry softly when she came to the window. He comforted her by holding her hand and said with a faint smile, "Don't be sad. I knew this day would come. What should have happened 5 years ago only happened now. God allowed me to live for 5 more years. I'm already satisfied." If she hadn't met her teacher 5 years ago, she would have died a long time ago. Hao Lianfei wasn't actually sad that she was going to die soon. She had always said that she was going to die soon, as long as she was happy and had no regrets. So what if she died? What really made her sad was that she had left Chi for this reason. Not only did she have to endure the pain alone in a foreign land, but she also had to bear so many bad names. She felt sorry for her like this. And Juanhao seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. The originally confident and cheerful middle-aged man's temples were now gray. "Uncle, I want to go out for a walk." Without waiting for Juanhao to speak, Hao Lianfei had already shrieked to stop him. "No." The two of them were startled. He said with a bitter smile, "Are you still afraid that I'll know what I saw? You know that I don't have the energy. In the future, Chi and Su He will have no relationship at all. Hao Yinfei nodded in realization. I want to see Mother. Uncle Lin, can you bring me to see her? And Juanhao raised his head and looked at Su Hehe in astonishment. Do you know where Qinggu is? Su Hehe nodded. You are so cruel to me. And Juanhao would have been shocked and angry if it were any other time. However, at this moment, he could not say anything to blame him. His 20 years of hard work was nothing compared to the pain that he had suffered since he was a child. At number 70 by the Sunset Lake, Sui came to the front door with Hao Lianfei's help. The electric door slowly opened. Looking at the old butler who was waiting respectfully on the stairs, she felt relieved. It had been so many years. This was the last time she stepped into number 70 by the Sunset Lake. This is Fu Juanxing's property? This realization made Juanhao's face turn green. Many details that he had overlooked were connected together. It turned out that Fu Juanxing had been playing tricks when he couldn't find Qingge for so many years. If he hadn't covered up all the clues, it was impossible that he couldn't find her. Yes, he patted Juanhao's hand and said softly, "Wait for me here. If my mother comes out, take her away immediately." Then he turned around resolutely and straightened his back. Hao Lianfei looked at Suhi's back and sobbed softly. He has been stubborn since he was young and never shows weakness. Yes, he has the same character as her mother. In the hall, Long Qingge and Fu Juanxing were arguing intensely. When they saw Suhi enter, the two stopped at the same time. We've been arguing for 20 years. Haven't we argued enough? Su Hehe curled his lips coldly and looked at Fu Juanxing sharply. President Fu, it's enough for you to imprison a woman who doesn't love you for 20 years. Let her go. Fu Juanxing's face was livid. He looked at her arrogantly and snorted coldly. Who allowed you to come in? Butler, kick her out. Wait, who dares? Long Qingge slapped the glass coffee table in front of her and looked at Fu Juanxing provocatively. My daughter has said a lot. I'm leaving today for sure. You dare. President Fu. Su Hehe walked step by step in front of Fu Juanxing and said expressionlessly, You've been using me to threaten Mother and trapped her for 20 years. Now I'm going to die. Do you think a dead person can be your bargaining chip? Die. Fu Juanxing gasped. Although he detested Su Hehe to the extreme, because her existence was proof that Qingge had betrayed him. But he had never thought that Su Hehe would die that day. This was simply a fantasy. You don't believe me, do you? Do you want me to die here now? Su Hehe approached step by step. The despair and seriousness in his eyes was so clear. Fu Juanxing, who had always been domineering, couldn't help but take a step back, his steps messy. Su Hehe's eyes told him that she wasn't lying, and although Qingge was sad to hear Su Hehe's words, she wasn't surprised. You knew about it? He asked Long Qingge in shock. So, you won't be able to trap me anymore. Long Qingge's eyes were as cold as ice, and she did not hide her hatred. Fu Juanxing fell onto the chair behind him and pointed at her with a trembling finger. He said in disbelief, You hate me that much? Yes. No one in the world hates you more than me. She loved him as much as she hated him, but sadly, she was still stubborn. Fu Juanxing, it was you who broke my wings that I was so proud of. You made me live this half-dead, half-human, half-ghost life for 20 years. As Long Qingge criticized Fu Juanxing, his cold face became paler and paler, and his expression became more and more pained. He loved her so much that he wanted to hold the whole world in his hands and offer it to her. Qingge, I did this because I love you too much. I can't stand you being with another man. I just want us to have enough time for you to slowly forgive me and accept me. So you spent 20 years? Long Qingge said aggressively, I've told you countless times. From a moment you and when Lingsheng gave birth to Fu Mingyao, it's over. It's completely over. I won't forgive you even if I die, let alone 20 years. If you hadn't betrayed me and given birth to Su He, this illegitimate daughter of mine, I wouldn't have given birth to Meng Yao with one Lingsheng. Su He's existence had always made him unable to let go. Long Qingge couldn't help but sneer at Fu Juanxing's words. She laughed so hard that her flowers were trembling. Fu Juanxing, sooner or later, you'll regret your suspicions for the rest of your life. I believe that day will come soon. After saying that, she closed her eyes in pain, and a crystal-clear tear fell from the corner of her eye. She had never been so desperate and sad like today after being trapped for 20 years. She had always loved and hated Fu Jianxing. Fu Jianxing could not let her go. In fact, she could not let Fu Jianxing go either. If she loved him too much, she would be doomed to be inseparable until she died. This was also the reason why she could not make up her mind completely. After dragging it out for 20 years, she finally realized that she had let He down the most in the end. Fu Jianxing would definitely spend the rest of his life to pay for the pain she had suffered with He. Mother, stop talking. Let's go. Su He couldn't bear to listen any longer. He pulled Lung Chinga and turned to leave. Wait, behind them, Fu Jianxing suddenly said gloomily. The two of them suddenly stopped. He slowly turned around and looked at Fu Jianxing impatiently. What else do you want? Chinga can leave, but you have to stay. Lung Chinga's words made Fu Jianxing's eyes turn red. There was a trace of madness in his eyes. Before you leave, you have to agree to one last condition. You have to attend Meng Yao and Chi Che's wedding as my woman. Otherwise, the three of us will perish together today. Su He suddenly felt a chill down his spine and glared at Fu Jianxing angrily. You're really perverted. Having witnessed Fu Jianxing's ruthlessness since she was young, she felt an unexplainable fear in her heart. This man had always kept his word and never considered the consequences. You know that I can definitely do it. Su He clenched his hands tightly and kept doing the actions of retracting and letting go. He took in a deep breath over and over again until he finally calmed down. Only then did he clench his teeth and resolutely say, I'll stay. All right, I'll stay. You let my mother go. Otherwise, we'll all die here today. Exchanging one life for another with the richest man in city won't be a loss. That's more like it. Fu Jianxing nodded in satisfaction, the corners of his mouth revealing an unfathomable arc. I'm sure Chi Che will agree to hold the wedding soon after he hears that the middle-aged, wealthy businessman you eloped with was me. It must be very interesting for his first girlfriend to become his future mother-in-law. Lung Chinga's eyes were also burning with flames. In the end, she was so angry that she laughed instead. She looked at Fu Jianxing with an unknown meaning and smiled evilly. Fu Jianxing, sooner or later, you'll regret your actions today so much that you want to stab yourself a few times. Let's wait and see. Ever since Lung Chinga left with Juanhao, Su He sat quietly on the balcony of the second floor. From afar, she smiled sincerely as she watched Juanhao's excited expression as he held Lung Chinga in his arms while crying tears of joy. At least uncle and would cherish her mother. She would be relieved in the future. Suddenly, heavy footsteps came from behind and stopped beside her without moving. Sui raised his eyebrows and smiled lightly. President Fu, is there something wrong? Fu Jianxing put out the cigarette, but in his hand in frustration. He came to sit opposite Su He and stared at her with a cold gaze. He said domineeringly, Tell me, what is going on with your body? He had been muddled with anger just now and had not thought of this at the moment. The more he thought about it, the more strange it became. With Sui's body condition, he should not have become like this. Although he hated Sui, in order to have a suitable bargaining chip to pin down Chinga, he actually hoped that Sui could always be safe and healthy. Even if he had sent her to study in the United States 5 years ago, he would have given her the best material conditions. Didn't Mother tell you? You two have been together for 20 years, yet she has never mentioned it to you. It seems that you are really a failure as a person. She was definitely not joking when she said she hated you. Fu Jianxing was so angry that his face turned green. He grabbed He's collar and said coldly, You don't have the right to say that. Otherwise, I don't think I will let you go. Of course, that includes the people you care about. He pushed his hand away with great difficulty. He patted his chest and took a deep breath. It took him a long time to recover. His bright and beautiful eyes were even more beautiful because of his anger. Fu Jianxing, I feel sorry for you. Even if you're the richest man in the world, there's still things that you can't get. The most bitter thing in life is that you can't get it. You will never get it. You deserve to die. Fu Juanqing was so angry that he suddenly reached out his hand and pinched Su Hehe. His slender neck looked like it would break at any moment. His fingers slowly closed, but he suddenly let go. Take care of yourself. I don't want to lose face at the press conference tomorrow. Press conference? What press conference? A bad premonition arose in her heart. She put down her pride and asked Fu Juanqing loudly as he left. I, Fu Juanqing, have never married in my life. As the woman that I, Fu Juanqing, have loved deeply for 5 years, of course, I have to position you as one of the heirs of the company. Otherwise, how can I prove that you are my woman? The arrogant voice revealed a trace of malice and cruelty. He staggered and fell to the ground. His heart was ice cold. Fu Juanqing had actually spared no expense to make Che hate her to fulfill Fu Mingyao's marriage. Fu Juanqing, you are despicable and shameless. Didn't you know long ago how despicable and shameless I am? Fu Juanqing turned his head arrogantly and snorted coldly. You'd better not play any tricks, or I won't even know what despicable methods I will use. Why? Why do you hate me so much? You won't even let go of a person who is about to die? After suppressing himself for too long, he could no longer bear too much pressure and pain and broke down instantly. She yelled at Fu Juanqing hysterically. You hold Fu Mingyao in your hands and treat her as the favored daughter of the heavens. It's understandable, but how can you be so cruel? Why must you use my pain to fulfill Fu Mingyao's happiness? Fu Juanqing was stunned. This man who was used to being tough felt an indescribable pain in his heart. It was different from the pain when he had a heart attack in the past. It seemed to come from the depths of his soul and could control his thoughts in an instant. However, Fu Juanqing had lived his entire life and had long cultivated a cold and tough heart. He could be cruel to anyone except Lung Chinga, especially Su He, whom he had always hated. Therefore, he quickly sobered up. His deep eyes were filled with flames of anger as he looked disdainfully at Su He. Meng Yao was destined to be the favored daughter of the heavens from birth, and you, Su He, will only be an illegitimate daughter for the rest of your life. Don't even think that you can change everything. Even if you die, you will die with your name on your back. His cold and bone-chilling words were filled with cruelty that sent chills down people's hearts. Su He lay helplessly on the cold, solid wood floor. From the corner of his eyes, he looked at Fu Juanqing's departing figure and closed his eyes in pain. She had encountered too many taunts and insults since she was young, but she had never hated Fu Juanqing as much as she hated him now. She had always thought that after all she had done, Che must have hated her and would soon forget about her. Although she felt pain in her heart, she was willing to do so. But Fu Juanqing had actually forced her to such a dead end. He had actually spared no expense to make the rumors from 5 years ago come true. She did not dare to imagine what kind of impact Fu Juanqing would cause once he appeared as a middle-aged, wealthy businessman for 5 years ago. What kind of harm would he bring to Che? Fu Juanqing could hurt her, but she did not care. However, he could not use such a method to hurt Che. Su He didn't know how long it had been before she stood up from the ground. When she walked toward the room where she used to live when she was a child, she happened to pass by Fu Juanqing's study. The study was still brightly lit in the wee hours of the night. Looking through the gap of the open door, Fu Juanqing was whispering to a middle-aged man. He nodded as he spoke, occasionally looking at Fu Juanqing in shock. He smiled coldly. They must be discussing tomorrow's press conference, right? They were really scheming. President, it's a call from the eldest miss. The middle-aged man's voice suddenly became much louder as he respectfully handed the phone to Fu Juanqing. He could not hear what was said inside. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, Fu Juanqing's voice suddenly became much louder, and a cold and stern voice was heard. This is the last time I will help you plan. In the future, if you can't even handle such a simple matter properly, you can quit the Fu Corporation. I, Fu Juanqing, don't have such a useless daughter like you. He finally couldn't hold back her laughter. Her voice was soft and filled with a heartbreaking tremble. The person inside immediately opened the door vigilantly. When a middle-aged man saw Su He in front of the door, his brows were tightly knitted together. A trace of surprise and pity flashed across his eyes. This realization made Su He glare at him unhappily. He didn't need anyone's pity. Fu Jianxing, who was sitting upright in his chair, also noticed Su He. He whispered a few words before hanging up the phone. "Shinbing, let her in." "No need," he interrupted in disgust and sneered coldly. "CEO Fu is really ruthless." It seems that Fu Mengyao is not as happy as she looks. After saying that, she turned around and left without caring about Fu Jianxing's livid face. In Juanhao's villa, Lung Chinga was like a soulless puppet. She allowed Juanhao to feed and drink her food and then sat there in a daze. No matter how much Juanhao begged, no matter how much he threatened and enticed her, she still looked indifferent. Hao Yinfei had been staring at Lung Chinga's face, and her expression was a little dazed. "Uncle Annie is so beautiful. No wonder he is so beautiful." Hao Yinfei couldn't bear to look away. The more she looked, the more confused she became. "Uncle have I seen Annie before? Why does she look so familiar?" And Juanhao nodded bitterly. "She is Lung Chinga." Lung Chinga. Hao Yinfei had a flash of inspiration. Lung Chinga, the legendary diva who retired from the entertainment industry and disappeared for a long time. So he is actually Lung Chinga's daughter. She had known he for so many years he had never mentioned that she was Lung Chinga's daughter, causing her to believe the rumors. With Lung Chinga's status as the legendary diva, how could her man be ordinary therefore? He's background was definitely not as bad as the rumors said. But will it be okay to leave he alone there? Hao Yinfei asked worriedly at the thought of this. Lung Chinga, who had been in a daze, suddenly said, "It will be fine." Fu Jianxing had always been despicable, but he would never be rude and shameless. What he pursued was to make his opponents feel fear in their spirit and soul, and sincerely submit from the bottom of their hearts therefore. He would be fine for now. The next day, the entire city seemed to be in an uproar. Fu Jianxing, the richest man in city who had lived in seclusion for many years, suddenly held a high-profile press conference. The Zifeng building had been blocked by many reporters since early in the morning. Hao Yinfei squeezed her way into the crowd with great difficulty. Then, she squeezed her way through the crowd to the elevator. The security guard who had been responsible for maintaining order only let her pass when he saw the Qi Group's work permit sign hanging around her neck. Meanwhile, his little secretary was looking at her with a pitiful expression. Those who were too low in rank didn't have a work permit. The little secretary had already been trapped outside for almost an hour. Hao Yinfei hurriedly waved at the security guard before letting the little secretary in. Sob, director, you either took a leave of absence or were late recently. Manager Lung seems to be very angry. The little secretary looked at her pitifully. Hao Yinfei calmly tidied her long hair and said indifferently, "Who cares? As long as Chi doesn't have any objections, it's fine. The president is busy getting married and doesn't have the time to bother with you. After all, time is too tight and all the women in the company are scheming to show off at the wedding. You're the only one who doesn't care. I heard that the president's friend grew up in either a high-ranking official or a wealthy family. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Since Manager Lung can't make it, you should put more attention on other men." Hao Yinfei rolled her eyes speechlessly. Now, even her little secretary had the right to criticize her. Wait a minute. Get married? Hao Yinfei couldn't help but scream in surprise. Instantly, countless people around her rolled their eyes. What date did you say was set? The date of the president's wedding. It's on the 28th at the end of this month. Don't you know? The company's press release has already been issued. The little secretary had a puzzled look on her face. The press release for the new paper is stamped by our public relations department. I thought you knew. Hao Yinfei gritted her teeth in hatred. As the director of the public relations department of the Qi Group, she really didn't know. It must be that *TCH Yin Chuqing's doing. Then what's going on today? The little secretary scratched her head in confusion. It seems that President Fu is going to announce the other successor of the group. It was said that it was his lover whom he had doted on for 5 years. This is a big deal. Once Miss Fu loses the right to inherit the huge Fu group, she will inherit it, the little secretary said as she pointed at the woman standing on the red carpet high platform in the distance. The whole Zifeng building is going crazy. I heard that President Fu dotes on this woman very much. Hao Yinfei followed the secretary's hand gesture and looked over. The familiar face that greeted her eyes made her stare in astonishment. She couldn't even hear the secretary's incessant chatter. Then, she rushed over recklessly. The security guards who maintained the order didn't dare to stop her because of her double identity as a senior executive of the Qi Corporation and President Qi's classmate. They allowed her to come to the front of the stage without any obstruction. Suddenly, a slender arm reached out to block her from rushing up to the rostrum. Hao Yinfei, I really feel sorry for you. In the whole world, only an idiot like you would believe Su He's words. Yin Chuqing crossed her arms across her chest and put on a pitiful look. I've long said that Su He abandoned Qi Che and ran away with a middle-aged, wealthy businessman for money. You didn't believe it, but now it's proven, right? Hao Yinfei's mind went blank. Middle-aged, wealthy businessman? Where did that middle-aged, wealthy businessman come from? Yin Chuqing pointed at the rostrum. Isn't it President Qi? Su He, this be Astra's TCH, is really lucky. As expected of a vixen's face. She hooked up with the famous President Fu with just a casual hook. Although she's a little older, her charm isn't bad at all. The important thing is that she's rich. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you believe that I'll tear your mouth apart? Hao Yinfei interrupted angrily. Yin Chuqing spread her hands and pointed at the stage again. She gloated and said, You'll know if I'm talking nonsense after you see for yourself. Hao Yinfei stared at Su He, who was sitting upright on the stage, without moving. Dear friends from the business world and the media, I, Fu Juanxing, have the honor to invite everyone here today because I have two pieces of good news to announce. The audience gradually quieted down as Fu Juanxing spoke with assurance. Everyone held their breaths as they stared at the most legendary man in City A. I, Fu Juanxing, have never married in my life and only have Meng Yao as my daughter. Now that my daughter is finally getting married, as a father, I can be considered to have fulfilled one of my wishes. Being able to get a son-in-law like Qi Che is very satisfying for me. This is the first thing. The other thing is that I, Fu, have finally found the one I love the most after searching for so many years. It is my honor to be able to obtain Miss Su for my entire life. I announce that from now on, Miss Su will be the female owner of the Fu Corporation. The crowd below the stage became completely silent. Everyone was shocked by Fu Juanxing's second announcement. Since he had personally stepped forward and said it out loud, it had to be true. What kind of woman could receive such an important gift from the Fu Corporation's richest man? In an instant, all the limelight flashed crazily at Su He. It's Su He? Oh my God, President Qi's woman? On the rostrum, Su He was wearing a white one-piece dress and a red coat with fox fur on the outside, which made her originally exquisite and beautiful appearance even more eye-catching. At this moment, her eyes were absent-minded and didn't focus on the distance at all. It was as if her soul had been sucked out. Seeing this scene, Hao Yinfei's eyes felt sour and uncomfortable. She didn't care about the little secretary's astonished gaze and directly rushed to the rostrum. She pulled Su He and was about to leave. Fu Juanxing was instantly enraged. Qi Che didn't come to cause trouble, but a small character had come. He, come with me. Let's not stay here, okay? Hao Yinfei grabbed Su He's hand. She felt that the hand in her palm was cold, even colder than the weather outside. She suddenly realized that the temperature in her hand was gradually disappearing. Her best friend's life had come to an end. This made her panic. She had never experienced the fact that he was about to die like this. Therefore, she couldn't care about so many Licca anymore. The richest man in City A, Qi Che, Fu Mengyao, and Lung Yunfeng should all get lost. Su He was still sitting like before. After a long time, he turned his head and smiled at Hao Yinfei. He said lightly, Fei, I'm fine. Don't worry. Hao Yinfei could no longer hold back her tears. She was already like this, and she still said that she was fine. How long was she going to torture him? Hee, let's go. Please, these things have nothing to do with you anymore. Don't torture yourself, okay? Drag her down. Fu Juanxing was very unhappy that someone dared to ruin his plans in City A. Lung Yinfeng, who was also watching from below the stage, quickly went up to the stage. He looked at Su Hehe thoughtfully and hurriedly walked away with Fu Juanxing. Then, he hugged Hao Lianfei and dragged her off the stage without any explanation. Lung Yinfeng, what are you doing? Let go of me? Hao Lianfei instantly lost control. Most of the reporters and onlookers at the scene looked at her curiously. As the director of the public relations department of the Qi Group, Hao Lianfei had a lot of connections. In addition, Qi Che often brought her around, so she could be considered a celebrity in City. Therefore, no one would have thought that the usually smart and capable Hao Lianfei would do such an impulsive and inappropriate thing. Her little secretary thoughtfully pushed her eyes on the bridge of her nose and muttered to herself, "What on earth could make Sister Fei go crazy? Be good. This is too unbelievable. Hao Lianfei, what are you crazy for? Is a woman like Su Hehe worthy of your protection?" Lung Yinfeng pulled her to a corner with an unfriendly tone. Lung Yinfeng, you don't understand. You don't know anything. Hao Lianfei looked at him with a strange expression at the end of her sentence. She actually burst into tears uncontrollably, causing Lung Yinfeng to cry in a panic. He stood there at a loss, not knowing what to do. He clumsily tried to comfort her, but it made her cry even harder. You don't understand. You don't understand anything. Hao Lianfei kept repeating this sentence. Lung Yinfeng raised his head and glanced at Su Hehe on the stage. It had to be said that Su Hehe was a demon that could bring disaster to the country and the people. Wherever she was, everyone would suffer as well. On the stage, Fu Juanxing whispered in Su Hehe's ear and sternly warned, "Smile for me. A woman who can be me, Fu Juanxing, is something that no one can ask for." Although Fu Juanxing was past his 40s, his charm did not decrease in the slightest. His mature and steady temperament, coupled with his title of the richest man, gave him a lot of halo. Therefore, there were quite a number of women who wanted to throw themselves into his arms. Su Hehe laughed self-deprecatingly. How happy do you expect a person who is about to die to smile? Fu Juanxing was stunned. The resolute gaze that was originally looking at her unconsciously became gentle, and his heart faintly throbbed. Facing this face and such words, he actually could not say anything cold. In Beijing, the atmosphere at the Qi family mansion's breakfast wasn't very good. Speaking of which, this was the first time Qi Che had returned to the Qi family mansion for a meal after Qi Che returned to Beijing and the Qi family's old man was discharged from the hospital. Even though the three aunties at home had prepared a very sumptuous breakfast, and with the addition of Tang Yi and Su Guining's uninvited guests, the atmosphere in the dining hall suddenly dropped to freezing point. Everyone's gaze was cast onto the high-definition television screen on the wall. At this moment, Fu Juanxing was looking at Su Hehe with a face full of affection, and the scene seemed to be frozen in this scene. Everyone could clearly see the gentleness in Fu Juanxing's eyes. Anyone who had a slight understanding of this man would know that this was too rare. It was almost impossible because it would make people believe it without any doubt. The knuckles of Qi Che's right hand, which was holding the spoon, were faintly white. His deep eyes seemed to be gathering a terrifying storm, as if it wanted to suck people in. Tang Yi looked at the television and then at Qi Che. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. No one would have thought that the man who let He go abroad 5 years ago was actually Fu Juanxing. Fu Mengyao looked at the television screen without blinking. The corners of her mouth couldn't help but be proud and cold. Su Guining, who had been observing everyone, swept a pair of sharp eyes over Fu Mengyao and then fell on Su He on the screen. He shook his head indiscernibly. What a pity, it was a pity that his background wasn't good. It was too difficult to integrate into this circle. Thinking of this, he unconsciously shifted his gaze to Qi Qing on the other side. His sharp eyes unconsciously softened. Fortunately, the woman he liked always belonged to him. But when would she be enlightened? Only then did he realize that Su Guining wanted more than just a marriage alliance. Chi Ching did not notice Su Guining's gaze at all. He nervously exchanged glances with Zhou Huaxiao, and they could see a hint of worry and helplessness in each other's eyes. The situation had developed to such an extent that none of them had expected. Would Ache be able to withstand this blow? As the head of the family, old Master Chi coughed heavily and said, "Ache, you're a good future mother-in-law. Your father-in-law has good taste." Cough, cough. Instantly, everyone on the table started spraying coffee and rice. They were all thrown off their feet and couldn't help but look at Chi with admiration. "Old man, do you dare to be more ruthless than your biological grandson? All right, you'll be attending the wedding, right? I've always wanted to meet him." Instantly, everyone was stunned. "Old man Chi, you can indeed be more ruthless." The only person at the table who was expressionless was Chi. He only calmly finished the coffee in front of him, elegantly wiped the corner of his mouth, and put down the napkin before saying, "Everyone, enjoy your meal. I still have an important meeting to attend, so I won't be accompanying you." This time, when he returned to Beijing, he was already prepared to transfer the company's headquarters to this side. The International Finance and Investment Department was the first to arrive, so it was indeed quite busy for him. "Ache, I'll go with you." Tang Yi had long lost his appetite and hurriedly stood up to chase after him. "Che!" Fu Mingyao also wanted to chase after him, but was stopped by Zhou Huaxiao. "Ache, I'll go with you." Tang Yi couldn't eat anymore and hurriedly stood up to chase after him. "Che!" Fu Mingyao also wanted to chase after him, but she was held down by Zhou Huaxiao. Looking at Chi-Che's back, Fu Mingyao lowered her head dejectedly. From the initial coldness to the later coldness to the disgust now, was all this really what she wanted? She originally thought that having a child would give her the biggest bargaining chip, but she still couldn't get a look from Che. She had spent so many years planning, but she wasn't willing. Even if she couldn't get happiness, she had to destroy Su He. Seeing that he had left, Chi-Ching finally couldn't bear it anymore and put down the cutlery in a huff. "Why doesn't Ah-Ching eat more?" "I can't eat." Only now did Ghost have the mood to eat. "If you can't eat, then get the hell back to the army." Old Master Chi finally lost his temper. Chi-Ching deliberately wanted to make him not suffer, not understanding this sick old man at all. "I won't. Ah-Che is getting married soon, and as his elder sister, it's even more impossible for me to return to the army." Now she was very regretful, regretting why she didn't help Ah-Che and Su He at that time. Looking at Ah-Che now really made her feel very uncomfortable. The lights in the night bar were blurred. On the stage, the sexy and enchanting sisters were dancing enthusiastically on the pole, attracting the passionate gazes of the men below. Duju secretly glanced at them. He could not help but sigh that they were indeed rare beauties. The twin sisters had identical faces. One was white as snow, and the other was a chocolate-colored Latino. He really did not know where young Master Tang had found them. In the corner, Chi-Che unconsciously turned the whiskey glass in his hand. The amber-colored liquid refracted a seductive light. The sky-blue shirt on his body was casually unbuttoned by him, revealing his sexy and strong chest muscles. He was different from his usual serious and solemn self. At this moment, he was more like an extremely dangerous and elegant jaguar, waiting for an opportunity to attack its prey. The night bar was a membership system. Those who could enter were either rich or noble. The female celebrities in the circle viewed entering this place as a symbol of status and status. In the huge and luxurious hall, there was a semi-open box in the corner. Sitting here, not only could one peek at the entire scene, but others could not see them. Therefore, many powerful people liked to choose such a place to sit. At this moment, there were more than 10 men and women sitting in a semi-open box, not far away from Chi-Che. The men's posture was casual, and their expressions exuded an inherent nobility if one looked carefully. The women were actually celebrities who often appeared on television. They were either beautiful or pure. Tonight, the host was young Master Gu. He was a well-known figure in 4 or 9 cities. He raced cars, fought, and played with celebrities. In short, there was nothing he did not dare to play with. In the circle, other than Su Guining and Qi Qing, he was the boss. Young Master Tang, when did such a top-notch handsome guy appear in your place? Why didn't you introduce him to us? Tang Yi was chatting with young Master Gu. When he heard his female companion's words, he hurriedly raised his head and followed her line of sight, turning pale with fright. Wasn't this Chi Che in the morning at his house? He had chased after him and was left behind by this kid. He had given up without finding anyone, but he did not expect to come here at night. When the others saw his expression, they also looked over curiously. When they saw him, they were also shocked. Young Master Chi? He did not want to be in the Playboy circle. Ever since he went to City A, he rarely came back. As his childhood friend, it was really difficult to meet him. Young Master Gu put down his wine glass, shook off his female companion, and walked over. Tang Yi also hurriedly followed, leaving behind the dumbfounded crowd. Those who did not know Chi Che were all dumbfounded. In Beijing, there were only a few people who could make young Master Gu and young Master Tang personally go up and greet them. What was his background? When he saw Chi Che, Tang Yi's bad-mouthed habit recurred. Yo, I say, young Master Chi, why aren't you home at this late hour to accompany your lovely wife to my place? Du Ju looked at Tang Yi in amusement. When will young Master Tang die if he doesn't keep his mouth shut? Sure enough, Chi Che put down his wine glass and raised his handsome face. A sinister smile hung on the corner of his mouth. I'm here to see when the Nightshade Bar will close. Recalling the pearl of the water and city that Chi Che had seized, Tang Yi almost swallowed a mouthful of blood. He didn't care about money, but that was his face. How was he supposed to survive in city in the future? Take it easy. Count itas my foul-mouthed mouth. If he couldn't afford to offend Chi Che, couldn't he at least avoid it? Brother Chi. Young Master Gu was full of admiration for Chi Che and hurriedly went up to greet him. Chi Che narrowed his eyes slightly, and only then did he see the person in front of him clearly. He was tall and handsome. He wore a rock-style white t-shirt and black leather vest, which made the man in front of him look even more energetic. Gu Cheng. Gu Cheng was 3 years younger than them and had been chasing after them and calling him brother. Brother Chi, when did you come back? Gu Cheng excitedly sat in front of Chi Che and complained, Why didn't you tell me? I even welcomed you. Chi Che didn't answer and instead asked, You're really in the entertainment industry? Your grandfather didn't die of anger, did he? Sometimes, the more one didn't allow it, the more people dared to challenge the authority. Back then, Su Qingge, then Lung Fei Fei, and unexpectedly, Gu Cheng was no exception. I heard you're getting married soon. Is that true? Tang Yi watched anxiously from his side. After a long time, the two boys had completely gone their separate ways. He's getting married. Remember to come for the wedding. Tang Yi really couldn't stand it anymore. He hurriedly pushed Gu Cheng away and then sat in front of Chi Che and said seriously, What do you plan to do? Chi Che slowly filled up his empty wine glass and finished it in one gulp. His pale face was dyed with a faint blush, making him look even more handsome and charming. What else can I do? I'll get tired too. You're going to lose to your father-in-law, just like that? It's not nice to say that a husband-in-law snatches a woman, but it's also not nice to lose, right? Tang Yi mocked. The Chi Che I know isn't like this. Did you know that she aborted my child? Chi Che slammed his wine glass onto the ground. The sharp sound of glass shattering caused the entire hall to fall silent. The people who had followed Gu Cheng to the first issue looked over in astonishment. It had been so long since night had fallen, yet no one dared to smash their glasses here. Young Master Gu, who was that person just now? Gu Cheng glared at him and said irritably, The people you can't afford to offend get lost. Don't be an eyesore here. He had never seen Chi Che lose his temper. This time, his sudden smashing of his glass was too shocking for Gu Cheng. It affected his mood as well, scaring everyone away. Not long after, the lively hall was cleared out. Only the stereo was playing a classic English song, deep and sorrowful. Tang Yi looked at the deserted bar and revealed a bitter smile. Even though you, Chi Che, have left Beijing for 10 years, you still stomp your feet and shake twice when you come back. It's just a cup. Do you think it's enough to scare people into scattering like birds and beasts? Du Ju raised his head and glared at young Master Tang. He was clearly jealous. Tang Yi took a cup from a new Chi and poured the wine himself. Only then did he try to defend Su He. Maybe there's some misunderstanding in the middle? He, that girl, is so kind that she would cry in fear even when she enters the laboratory. How could she abort your child? The corners of Chi's mouth curled up into a mocking and cold smile. His deep voice was indifferent and ruthless. That was in the past. Don't forget that she's the hand of an angel now. Even Ififan can't compare to her with a scalpel. Tang Yi instantly hit the eggplant with frost. That's right, he had indeed changed. In the past, she didn't even dare to do an experimental autopsy on her own. Don't mention her in front of me in the future. Right now, he had nothing but hatred. Tang Yi sighed heavily. If it was him, he wouldn't be able to stand it, let alone a proud person like Che. My dad will be back the night after tomorrow. Remember to attend the banquet. In the end, after finishing a glass of wine, Chi simply stood up and left. At the entrance, he brushed past the twin sisters. He turned a blind eye to their flying kisses and flirtatious eyes, not even pausing for a moment. Boss, your friend is so cold. The twin sisters, who had always been successful among men, had their confidence taken a huge blow. Tang Yi smacked the twin sisters' perky buttocks and said nonchalantly, "That guy is a pervert. Ignore him. You guys can have me." If he had Su He probably wouldn't be willing to look at other women. After alighting from Fu Juanxing's private plane, she didn't expect that she would come back so soon after leaving Beijing. It was different from what she had expected. She thought that she would never come back. Will your mother come to Beijing with you? Fu Juanxing walked side by side with her, his tone unable to hide his pride. She will definitely come. She had a feeling that she probably wouldn't have the life to go back to Beijing this time. Her mother would definitely not leave her behind. Fu Juanxing paused in his footsteps and retorted fiercely, "Impossible." Qingge swore that she would never set foot in Beijing again. What if she has reached the end of her life? Su He turned his head and looked at him coldly. The coldness in his eyes made Fu Juanxing, an old fox who roamed the business world, have no choice but to be on high alert. What do you mean by that? Say it again. Fu Juanxing pinched her shoulder excitedly and exerted force with his big hand. Su He felt as if she was about to be crushed, and her forehead broke out in cold sweat. She took a deep breath with difficulty and slowly said, "Mother and daughter are connected. Let's have a hunch." "Don't jinx it." Fu Juanxing unhappily let go of her and strode forward. Su He unhurriedly followed. The moment he turned around, he saw a familiar figure in the crowd. Her hair was white and her tall figure was slightly hunched. "Teacher." She looked carefully, but there were too many people at the airport exit, so she was instantly drowned in the crowd. Her teacher was not in good health, so she could not have taken a long flight. Her eyes must have been blurred. Fu Mingyao and Butler Bai came to pick her up personally outside the airport. Fu Mingyao, who was dressed in a white down jacket, was rarely weak. Her face was pale in the early stages of pregnancy, and it was obvious that she had not been having a good time recently. Fu Juanxing frowned unhappily at Fu Mingyao's lack of response. He lamented that this daughter of his was too embarrassing. Not only did she not snatch Su He away, but she had also made him look so miserable. Daddy, seeing Fu Juanxing and Fu Mingyao pounce on him, wanting to cry, but not daring to, Su He laughed. She had never seen the high and mighty first daughter show such a look. "What are you laughing at? Is there a rule that says I can't laugh? You're courting death." Without waiting for Fu Mingyao to finish her sentence, Fu Mingyao slapped down, leaving a burning five-finger mark on Su He's delicate cheek. Su He's face was burning with pain, but no matter how much it hurt, it couldn't compare to the pain in his heart. He looked at Fu Juanxing in despair and got into the car first. Fu Juanxing warned Fu Mingyao with an unhappy expression, "You better behave yourself for the time being. Don't even think about eliminating Su He now." "Why? She ruined so many good things for me and made me the laughingstock of the entire city. I've endured it for long enough." Fu Juanxing's eyes became even colder and fiercer. "Why do you think Chi agreed to marry you in the end? You're not really naive to think that it's because of the child, are you? Or is it because of your status? Isn't it? Fu Mingyao suddenly muttered to herself in a panic. Fu Juanxing's face was full of disappointment, and the mockery at the corner of his mouth was even more obvious wrong. It's because of Su Hehe. It's because of Su Hehe's betrayal that he agreed to it. If anything happens to Su Hehe, her betrayal can be ignored. So you'd better bless Su Hehe to live a long life. Only then will it become the hatred in Chi Che's heart forever. Fu Mingyao staggered. Fortunately, Butler Bai was quick enough to catch her. The disappointment on Fu Juanxing's face was even more obvious. In the end, he didn't say anything and took her to another car. Annie Bai, do you think I'm really father's daughter? Why have I never felt any fatherly love ever since I was young? Butler Bai lowered her head, so no one could see her expression clearly. However, there was a hint of powerlessness in her voice. Eldest miss, you only need to remember that you are the heir of the Fu Corporation. You are the proud daughter of the heavens that Mr. Fu holds in his hands. That's right. Although I don't have fatherly love, I have everything. Now even Chi Che belongs to me. Su Hehe is only worthy of being stepped on by me. That's enough. That's enough. Fu Juanxing's trip to Beijing this time was very full. Not long after he stayed in the hotel, many political and business celebrities came to invite him for lunch. Miss Su, Mr. Fu wants you to go to the Chinese restaurant on the 4th floor. Shen Bing knocked on Su Hehe's door and said respectfully while standing outside. Not interested. Su Hehe closed the door without saying anything, but unexpectedly, Shen Bing blocked it with his foot. If Miss Su really doesn't want to go, Mr. Fu won't force you. But tonight, please prepare for the banquet held at the Qi family's old residence. Later, I will send someone to send the evening gown and lunch to the room, so I won't disturb Miss Su's rest. After saying that, he elegantly bowed and left. Su Hehe stood at the door in a daze until Shen Bing had gone far away before coming back to his senses. The Qi family's old residence's banquet, speaking of which, she had never been to the Qi family's old residence. She had always wanted to go when she was in university, but she didn't have the courage. Now, she had to go with such an identity. How ironic. When she was about to close the door again, she was unexpectedly blocked by a robust arm. Su Hehe was slightly angry. What on earth was Fu Juanxing trying to do? Was it endless? When she saw clearly that the person standing in front of her was Du Ju, she had a surprised expression. It's you. She nervously looked behind him. When she realized that there was no one there, she couldn't help but reveal a trace of disappointment. Then, when she realized that her mood wasn't right, she immediately perked up and sternly warned herself at this time. She should be afraid of seeing Che, not looking forward to it. Du Ju revealed a bitter smile. Do you have time to have a cup of coffee together? Su He nodded. Du Ju had always taken care of her, so he was very grateful to him from the bottom of his heart. Wait for me for a moment. I'll change my clothes. It was really inconvenient to go out in this simple nightgown. Only then did Du Ju see that she was wearing a bohemian-style nightgown. The brown silk material made her look even paler and more elegant. He turned around uncomfortably, and the 1.8-meter-tall burly man even had a layer of redness on his ears. Su Hehe could not help but laugh. He then closed the door and went to change. On the 32nd floor of the hotel, there was a revolving cafe in the air. The environment was elegant and Mediterranean style. Sitting on the comfortable sofa, one could overlook the scenery of Beijing from a 360-degree angle. The Imperial Palace in the distance could be faintly seen. Su Hehe had to admit that looking down from above could indeed make one's mind open. Du Ju was so engrossed in watching Su Hehe enjoy the scenery that he did not speak. He observed her expression without a trace. When he saw that even her heavy makeup couldn't cover up her pale face, he slightly frowned and tentatively said, Miss Su, if you're having a hard time, you can tell me directly. Her appearance really didn't look like she had abandoned her old lover to fall into the arms of a new one. There wasn't the slightest trace of joy at the corners of her eyes. Instead, there was a trace of sorrow in her eyes that was more than enough to make one's heart tremble. Fu Juanxing was indeed a fatal attraction to women, but he didn't believe that the CEO would lose to Fu Juanxing. No matter what, Su He shouldn't have abandoned the CEO. Did Chi send you here? Su He pulled his gaze back from the distant scenery and stared at Du Ju. No, he shook his head. The truth was that ever since Su He left, the president hadn't mentioned her at all. It was as if nothing had happened. However, he knew that the president had returned to the days when Su He had just left 5 years ago. He looked calm and indifferent, but he knew that the president was definitely not having an easy time. The coldness that seeped out from his bones and was like 1,000 miles away was truly terrifying. As the saying goes, when something goes wrong, there must be a devil. Chi was one of the evildoers. Suhi heaved a sigh of relief. If it was in the face of Chi's question, she really didn't know what to say. In fact, she was afraid to see Chi at this time. She was afraid that her heart would soften, she would feel heartache, she would be jealous, and she would be unable to control herself and disregard everything. All of this wasn't something she could do. She didn't want to waste the last bit of time, if that was the case. What use was there for her actions over the past 5 years? What do you want to say? Say it. Su He buried his head in the fruit salad in front of him and didn't raise his head to look at Du Ju. 5 years ago, Du Ju hesitated and didn't know how to say it. Such an awkward question wasn't something he should ask, but it wasn't worth it for the president if he didn't ask. It was indeed Fu Juanxing who sent me to America 5 years ago, he said without waiting for him to ask Su He. Except that she wasn't Fu Juanxing's woman. What Fu Juanxing said at the press conference was almost exactly the same. Since she was young, it was indeed Fu Juanxing who raised her, or more accurately, the mother and daughter. Although she hated Fu Juanxing, she never really hated him. It was also from the beginning of the press conference that she truly hated him. Fu Juanxing was too ruthless and cruel. Even if she died, she would not leave any leeway for herself. If her guess was true, would Fu Juanxing still be ruthless? Thinking of this, Su He could not help but sneer. In the past, she did not tell the truth because she was stubborn, because she could not let go of her pride, and also because she hated his cruelty to her mother. Now, she would not say that it was her revenge against Fu Juanxing. She was very curious what Fu Juanxing's expression would be when he knew the truth. Du Ju was stunned. His face was livid, and his fingers holding the cup turned white. Su He finished the last mouthful of salad and slowly stood up to look at Du Ju. He said word by word, "What happened at the press conference looked like a show, but it was almost exactly the same, so you don't have to doubt whether it was true or not." She used the word almost, and in the end, she couldn't bear to lie to him. Goodbye. Su He adjusted his coat and turned to leave. It wasn't until her figure disappeared at the elevator entrance that a handsome man and beautiful woman walked out from behind the pillar. Thank you for the monthly vote of Piglet 4725. Thank you for the tip.